take millions of Americans' personal information without their knowledge in order to manipulate public opinion and target individual voters. Specifically, on February the 16th, Special Counsel Mueller issued an indictment against the Russia-based Internet Research Agency and 13 of its employees for interfering operations targeting the United States. Through this 37-page indictment, we learned that the IRA ran a coordinated campaign through 470 Facebook accounts and pages. The campaign included ads and false information to create discord and harm Secretary Clinton's campaign. And the content was seen by an estimated 157 million Americans. A month later, on March 17th, news broke that Cambridge Analytica exploited the personal information of approximately 50 million Facebook users without their knowledge or permission. And last week, we learned that number was even higher, 87 million Facebook users who had their private information taken without their consent. Specifically, using a personality quiz he created, Professor Cohen collected the personal information of 300,000 Facebook users and then collected data on millions of their friends. It appears the information collected included everything these individuals had on their Facebook pages, and according to some reports, even included private direct messages between users. Professor Cohen is said to have taken data from over 70 million Americans. It has also been reported that he sold this data to Cambridge Analytica for $800,000. Cambridge Analytica then took this data and created a psychological welfare tool to influence United States elections. In fact, the CEO, Alexander Nix, declared that Cambridge Analytica ran all the digital campaign, the television campaign, and its data informed all the strategy for the Trump campaign. The reporting has also speculated that Cambridge Analytica worked with the Internet Research Agency to help Russia identify which American voters to target with its propaganda. I'm concerned that press reports indicate Facebook learned about this breach in 2015, but appears not to have taken significant steps to address it until this year. So this hearing is important, and I appreciate the conversation we had yesterday. And I believe that Facebook, through your presence here today and the words you're about to tell us, will indicate how strongly your industry will regulate and or reform the platforms that they control. I believe this is extraordinarily important. You lead a big company with 27,000 employees, and we very much look forward to your comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Feinstein. The history and growth of Facebook mirrors that of many of our technological giants. Founded by Mr. Zuckerberg in 2004, Facebook has exploded over the past 14 years. Facebook currently has over 2 billion monthly active users across the world, over 25,000 employees and offices in 13 U.S. cities and various other countries. Like their expanding user base, the data collected on Facebook users has also skyrocketed. They have moved on from schools, likes, and relationship statuses. Today, Facebook has access to dozens of data points, ranging from ads that you've clicked on, events you've attended, and your location based upon your mobile device. It is no secret that Facebook makes money off this data through advertising revenue, although many seem confused by or altogether unaware of this fact. Facebook generates generated $40 billion in revenue in 2017, with about 98% coming from advertising across Facebook and Instagram. Significant data collection is also occurring at Google, Twitter, Apple, and Amazon, and even an ever-expanding portfolio of products and services offered by these companies grant endless opportunities to collect increasing amounts of information on their customers. As we get more free or extremely low-cost services, the trade-off for the American consumer is to provide more personal data. The potential for further growth and innovation based on collection of data is limitless. However, the potential for abuse is also significant. While the contours of the Cambridge Analytica situation are still coming to light, there was clearly a breach of consumer trust and a likely improper transfer of data. The Judiciary Committee will hold a separate hearing exploring Cambridge and other data privacy issues. More importantly, though, these events have ignited a larger discussion on consumers' expectations and the future of data privacy in our society. It has exposed that consumers may not fully understand or appreciate the extent to which their data is collected, protected, transferred, used, and misused. Data has been used in advertising and political campaigns for decades. The amount and type of data obtained, however, has seen a very dramatic change. Campaigns including Presidents Bush, Obama, and Trump all use these increasing amounts of data to focus on micro-targeting and personalization over numerous social media platforms, and especially Facebook. In fact, President Obama's campaign developed an app utilizing the same Facebook feature as Cambridge Analytica to capture the information of not just the app's users, but millions of their friends. The digital director for that campaign for 2012 described the data scraping app as something that would, quote, wind up being the most groundbreaking piece of technology developed for this campaign, end of quote. So the effectiveness of these social media tactics can be debated, but their use over the past years across the political spectrum and their increased significance cannot be ignored. Our policy towards data privacy and security must keep pace with these changes. Data privacy should be tethered to consumer needs and expectations. Now, at a minimum, consumers must have the transparency necessary to make an informed decision about whether to share their data and how it can be used. Consumers ought to have clear information, not opaque policies and complex click-through consent pages. The tech industry has an obligation to respond to widespread and growing concerns over data privacy and security and to restore the public's trust. The status quo no longer works. Moreover, Congress must determine if and how we need to strengthen privacy standards to ensure transparency and understanding for the billions of consumers who utilize these products. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, good afternoon. Let me just cut to the chase. If you and other social media companies do not get your act in order, none of us are going to have any privacy anymore. That's what we're facing. We're talking about personally identifiable information that, if not kept by the social media companies from theft, a value that we have in America being our personal privacy, we won't have it anymore. It's the advent of technology, and of course, all of us are part of it. From the moment that we wake up in the morning until we go to bed, we're on those handheld tablets. And online companies like Facebook are tracking our activities and collecting information. Facebook has a responsibility to protect this personal information. We had a good discussion yesterday. We went over all of this. You told me that the company had failed to do so. It's not the first time that Facebook has mishandled its users' information. The FTC found that Facebook's privacy policies had deceived users in the past. And in the present case, we recognize that Cambridge Analytica and an app developer lied to consumers and lied to you, lied to Facebook. But did Facebook watch over the operations? We want to know that. And why didn't Facebook notify 87 million users that their personally identifiable information had been taken? And it was being also used. Why were they not informed? For unauthorized political purposes. So only now, and I appreciate our conversation, only now Facebook has pledged to inform those consumers whose accounts were compromised. I think you're genuine. I got that sense in conversing with you. You want to do the right thing. You want to enact reforms. We want to know if it's going to be enough. And I hope that will be in the answers today. Now, since we still don't know what Cambridge Analytica has done with this data, you heard Chairman Thune say, as we have discussed, we want to haul Cambridge Analytica in to answer these questions at a separate hearing. I want to thank Chairman Thune for working with all of us on scheduling a hearing. There's obviously a great deal of interest in this subject. I hope we can get to the bottom of this. And if Facebook and other online companies will not or cannot fix the privacy invasions, then we are going to have to. We, the Congress. How can American consumers trust folks like your company to be caretakers of their most personal and identifiable information? And that's the question. Thank you.
Thank you, my colleagues and Senator Nelson. Our witness today is Mark Zuckerberg, founder, chairman, chief executive officer of Facebook. Mr. Zuckerberg launched Facebook February 4th, 2004, at the age of 19. And at that time, he was a student at Harvard University. As I mentioned previously, his company now has over 40 billion of annual revenue and over 2 billion monthly active users. Mr. Zuckerberg, along with his wife, also established the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative to further philanthropic causes. I now turn to you. Welcome to the committee. And whatever your statement is orally, if you have a longer one, it'll be included in the record. So proceed, sir.
Chairman Grassley, Chairman Thune, Ranking Member Feinstein, and Ranking Member Nelson, and members of the committee. We face a number of important issues around privacy, safety, and democracy, and you will rightfully have some hard questions for me to answer. Before I talk about the steps we're taking to address them, I want to talk about how we got here. Facebook is an idealistic and optimistic company. For most of our existence, we focused on all of the good that connecting people can do. And as Facebook has grown, people everywhere have gotten a powerful new tool for staying connected to the people they love, for making their voices heard, and for building communities and businesses. Just recently, We've seen the Me Too movement and the March for Our Lives organized, at least in part, on Facebook. After Hurricane Harvey, people came together to raise more than $20 million for relief. And more than 70 million small businesses use Facebook to create jobs and grow. But it's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news, foreign interference in elections, and hate speech, as well as developers and data privacy. We didn't take a broad enough view of our responsibility, and that was a big mistake. And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry. I started Facebook, I run it, and I'm responsible for what happens here. So now we have to go through all of our relationship with people and make sure that we're taking a broad enough view of our responsibility. It's not enough to just connect people. We have to make sure that those connections are positive. It's not enough to just give people a voice. We need to make sure that people aren't using it to harm other people or to spread misinformation. And it's not enough to just give people control over their information. We need to make sure that the developers they share it with protect their information too. Across the board, we have a responsibility to not just build tools, but to make sure that they're used for good. It will take some time to work through all the changes we need to make across the company, but I'm committed to getting this right. This includes the basic responsibility of protecting people's information, which we failed to do with Cambridge Analytica. So here are a few things that we are doing to address this and to prevent it from happening again. First, we're getting to the bottom of exactly what Cambridge Analytica did and telling everyone affected. What we know now is that Cambridge Analytica improperly accessed some information about millions of Facebook members by buying it from an app developer. That information, this was information that people generally share publicly on their Facebook pages, like names and their profile picture and the pages they follow. When we first contacted Cambridge Analytica, they told us that they had deleted the data. About a month ago, we heard new reports that suggested that wasn't true. And now we're working with governments in the US, the UK, and around the world to do a full audit of what they've done and to make sure they get rid of any data they may still have. Second, to make sure no other app developers out there are misusing data, we're now investigating every single app that had access to a large amount of information in the past. And if we find that someone improperly used data, we're going to ban them from Facebook and tell everyone affected. Third, to prevent this from ever happening again going forward, we're making sure that developers can access as much information now. The good news here is that we already made big changes to our platform in 2014 that would have prevented this specific situation with Cambridge Analytica from occurring again today. But there's more to do, and you can find more details on the steps we're taking in my written statement. My top priority has always been our social mission of connecting people, building community, and bringing the world closer together. Advertisers and developers will never take priority over that as long as I'm running Facebook. I started Facebook when I was in college.
Sounds very scripted, I would say, right?
Come a long way since.
Forgive the noise in the background,
We
too,
now
guys.
serve more than 2 billion people.
I know I'm
around
opening
the
up a
world.
little late here today.
And
Just
every
kind of, had
People
stuff going
use our
on today. And,
services to stay connected with the people that
I figured I said I'll
matter.
open up for this Mark, Zuckerberg
I believe deeply in what we're doing.
hearing here, which
And I
should be
know
very interesting.
that
And
when we address these challenges,
again, as soon as he starts speaking, the
we
stock
want
starts
people
spiking up. You
connected,
guys know I
giving
took
more
a short
people a
position
voice
on it. I said I
as a
took one
positive
earlier.
force in the
I
world.
took it around like 162.
I realize the issues we
Obviously,
talk
right
about
now it
today
spiked
aren't
up
just
a little
issues
dollar,
for
so
Facebook and
I
our
kind of
community.
pulled back a little bit.
They're issues and challenges for all of us
Probably
as
gonna,
Americans.
and I should have noticed that. So
Thank you for
this
having
thing probably
me here
gonna pop
today.
when he starts speaking, so I
I'm
might
ready
just
to
short
take
the pop
questions.
more or less and kind of just take a position at that 162 level.
Remind members that maybe
But we'll see. I mean, the stock, it can go either way. Everybody's like, under the same mindset, the thing can go either way. Right now it's showing that.
The 5-minute rule, and that applies to those of us who are chairing the committee as well.
So either they're gonna grill him or they're gonna give him no pat on the back, kind of scenario.
Extensive amounts of personal data for billions of users. A significant amount of that data is shared.
Again, hope you guys' day is going well too. Uncle Jocelyn and Power Profit to everyone stopping by. Again, that's your brother After Naporian.
Early this
excited and
year,
humble that you guys, if you have a chance to, even stop by, I appreciate it.
whether that
Just
data
opening up
was
my mic kind of for this
transferred
little
by
congressional
some
or this Senate hearing
to other parties.
for Facebook
Moreover, your
here.
policies
Obviously, the
only
spies are
prohibit
super bullish on the
transfers
day, just tearing
by
it up.
developers
I'm sure you guys have been
who are
watching it. I kind of been, like I say,
from
in
such
and out a
data.
little bit. They kind of watching the market
Number one,
moving on, didn't really do
besides
anything,
Professor Kogan's transfer,
huge
now
myself.
potentially
Kind of,
cute
I started even
you.
trading late. I traded late
do you
today,
know of any instances
so I missed a lot of
where
the great
user
moves on
data
the
was
on the AM side of the house.
transferred to third party
But right now,
in
it's,
Facebook's terms?
just watching
If
Facebook
so,
here. I also
how
got
many
my eye on
times has
Tesla
that
too.
happened? And was Facebook only made aware of that transfer by some third party?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. As I mentioned, we're now conducting a full investigation into every single app that had access to a large amount of information before we locked down the platform.
Yeah, that's after the fact. The investigations always come after the fact, right?
2014.
But they'll block me and you for
we're going to be investigating
even just throwing up two thumbs. They'll mislead that for two birds, right? You throw up two thumbs, that's a hate speech or some derogatory or inflammatory. Then they'll ban you for 7 days or 24 hours. Right. But everybody else just get, they get like a little 7-day ban, a little slap on the back, but your data's been sold right now. Right now, as we're speaking, a lot of you guys' data's been sold. Ain't nothing he can do about it to get to retrieve it back at this point too. It's on the web. It's circulating around the web.
Improperly transferred data.
We spoke about that with some of the elder people that not so technologically advanced. They probably on Facebook putting in social security numbers and all kind of stuff. They don't know. Cambridge Analytica and these other companies just got these stuff just selling it for top dollar right now. True story.
Looked at patterns of how
hey,
and accessed information.
I know a lot of it falls back on the user responsibility too to some degree, but again,
about apps that might be doing sketchy things. Going forward,
the trickiness is in the value of
and do much more regular
the policy, right? The terms of service, right? And that's what a lot of people have problems with. The terms of service is so ambiguous. You can't even opt out. You can't really fully delete it. You can only deactivate it. Where they do that at?
Specific past
right? On Facebook, right?
I was going to.
But again, that's
sitting here today, you have no idea. And if I'm wrong
that's
on
what
that,
it does.
You're telling me, I think, that you're able to supply those figures to us, at least as of this point.
Mr. Chairman, I will have my team follow up with you on what information we have.
Okay, but right now you have no certainty of whether or not, how much of that's going on, right? Okay. Facebook collects massive amounts of data from consumers, including content, networks, contact lists, device information, location, and information from third parties. Yet your data policy is only a few pages long and provides consumers with only a few examples of what is collected and how it might be used. The examples given emphasize benign uses such as connecting with friends, but your policy does not give any indication for more controversial issues of such data. My question, why doesn't Facebook disclose to its users all the ways the data might be used by Facebook and other third parties, and what is Facebook's responsibility to inform users about that information?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it's important to tell people exactly how the information that they share on Facebook is going to be used. That's why every single time you go to share something on Facebook, whether it's a photo in Facebook or a message in Messenger or WhatsApp, every single time there's a control right there about who you're going to be sharing it with, whether it's your friends or public or a specific group, and you can change that and control that in line. To your broader point about the privacy policy, this gets into.
I don't know about that, Mark Zuckerberg.
We and others in the tech industry have found challenging, which is that long privacy policies are very confusing. And if you make it long and spell out all the detail, then you're probably going to reduce the percent of people who read it and make it accessible to them. So one of the things that we've struggled with over time is to make something that is as simple as possible so people can understand it, as well as giving them controls in line in the product in the context of when they're trying to actually use them, taking into account that we don't expect that most people will want to go through and read a full legal document.
Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday when we talked, I gave the relatively harmless example that I'm communicating with my friends on Facebook and indicate that I love a certain kind of chocolate. And all of a sudden I start receiving advertisements for chocolate. What if I don't want?
This is an old guy, so you know you finna go hard.
Commercial advertisements.
I don't want no chocolate.
So your chief operating officer, Ms. Sandberg, suggested on the NBC Today show that Facebook users who do not want their personal information used for advertising might have to pay for that protection, pay for it. Are you actually considering having Facebook users pay for you not to use that information?
Senator, people have a control over how their information is used in ads in the product today. So if you want to have an experience where your ads aren't targeted using all the information that we have available, you can turn off third-party information. What we've found is that even though some people don't like ads, people really don't like ads that aren't relevant. And while there is some discomfort, for sure, with using information and making ads more relevant, the overwhelming feedback that we get from our community is that people would rather have us show relevant content there than not. So we offer this control that you're referencing. Some people use it. It's not the majority of people on Facebook. And I think that that's a good level of control to offer. I think what Cheryl was saying was that in order to not run ads at all, we would still need some sort of business model.
And that is your business model. So I take it that, and I use the harmless example of chocolate, but if it got into more personal thing, communicating with friends, and I want to cut it off, I'm going to have to pay you in order not to send me, using my personal information, something that I don't want.
Uh-oh, it's about to get real.
In essence, is what I understood.
It's about to get real.
Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. Although, to be clear, we don't offer an option today for people to pay to not show ads. We think offering an ad-supported service is the most aligned with our mission of trying to help connect everyone in the world. Because we want to offer a free service that everyone can afford.
Okay.
That's the only way that we can reach billions of people.
So, therefore, you consider my personally identifiable data the company's data, not my data. Is that it?
It's about to get real.
No, Senator. Actually, at the first line of our terms of service say that you control and own the information and content that you put on Facebook.
Well, the recent scandal is obviously frustrating, not only because it affected 87 million, but because it seems to be part of a pattern of lax data practices by the company going back years. So back in 2011, it was a settlement with the FTC, and now we discover yet another instance where the data was failed to be protected. When you discovered the Cambridge Analytica that had fraudulently obtained all of this information, why didn't you inform those 87 million?
When we learned in 2015 that Cambridge Analytica had bought data from an app developer on Facebook that people had shared it with, we did take action. We took down the app and we demanded that both the app developer and Cambridge Analytica delete and stop using any data that they had. They told us that they did this. In retrospect, it was clearly a mistake to believe them, and we should have followed up and done a full audit then. And that is not a mistake that we will make.
Yes, you did that, and you apologized for it, but you didn't notify them. And do you think that you have an ethical obligation to notify 87 million Facebook users?
Senator, when we heard back from Cambridge Analytica that they had told us that they weren't using the data and had deleted it, we considered it a closed case. In retrospect, that was clearly a mistake. We shouldn't have taken their word for it, and we've updated our policies and how we're going to operate the company to make sure that we don't make that mistake again.
Did anybody notify the FTC?
No, Senator, for the same reason that we considered it a closed case.
Senator Thune.
And Mr. Zuckerberg, would you do that differently today, presumably, in response to Senator Nelson's question?
Yes.
Having to do it over. This may be your first appearance before Congress, but it's not the first time that Facebook has faced tough questions about its privacy policies. Wired magazine recently noted that you have a 14-year history of apologizing for ill-advised decisions regarding user privacy, not unlike the one that you made just now in your opening statement.
They're going in, guys.
After more than a decade of promises to do better, how is today's apology different? And why should we trust Facebook to make the necessary changes to ensure user privacy and give people a clearer picture of your privacy policies?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have made a lot of mistakes in running the company. I think it's pretty much impossible, I believe, to start a company in your dorm room and then grow it to be at the scale that we're at now without making some mistakes. And because our service is about helping people connect and information, those mistakes have been different in how we try not to make the same mistake multiple times. But in general, a lot of the mistakes are around how people connect to each other just because of the nature of the service. Overall, I would say that we're going through a broader philosophical shift in how we approach our responsibility as a company. For the first 10 or 12 years of the company, I viewed our responsibility as primarily building tools that if we could put those tools in people's hands, then that would empower people to do good things. What I think we've learned now across a number of issues, not just data privacy, but also fake news and foreign interference in elections, is that we need to take a more proactive role and a broader view of our responsibility. It's not enough to just build tools. We need to make sure that they're used for good. And that means that we need to now take a more active view in policing the ecosystem and in watching and kind of looking out and making sure that all of the members in our community are using these tools in a way that's going to be good and healthy. So at the end of the day, this is going to be something where people will measure us by our results on this. It's not that I expect that anything I say here today to necessarily change people's view, but I'm committed to getting this right. And I believe that over the coming years, once we fully work.
I mean, you got this oratory value together, right? You got this whole spiel together. So, Sharp, you know, you got to do what you got to do, right? Because he's sitting before some sharks right now, and I guarantee he's
the line between legitimate political discourse and hate speech can sometimes be hard to identify, especially when you're relying on artificial intelligence and other technologies for the initial discovery. Can you discuss what steps that Facebook currently takes on making these evaluations, the challenges that you face, and any examples of where you may draw the line between what is and what is not hate speech?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'll speak to hate speech, and then I'll talk about enforcing our content policies more broadly. So actually, maybe if you're okay with it, I'll go in the other order. So from the beginning of the company in 2004, I started in my dorm room. It was me and my roommate. We didn't have AI technology that could look at the content that people were sharing. So we basically had to enforce our content policies.
We back to the
people could share what they wanted.
The whole dorm room experience now. So
and then if someone in the community,
he has to make them understand, you know, hey, I mean, I'm just, you know,
policies, they'd flag it for us, and
not too long removed from a college kid here. You know,
increasingly,
I'm running a 2 billion user subscriber based platform here. I mean, I'm still learning. Sounds pretty obvious to me. That's basically what he was just grilling them, you know.
By the end of this year, by the way, we're going to have.
Yeah, I am the American dream success story, so to speak, right?
Security and content review.
Starting in the dorm room, you know, you guys had way more than me.
People look at it, and if it violates our policies,
even though I went to Harvard, right?
Some problems lend themselves more easily to AI solutions than others. So hate speech is one of the hardest because determining if something is hate speech is very linguistically nuanced, right? You need to understand, you know, what is a slur and what, whether something is hateful, not just in English, but the majority of people on Facebook use it in languages that are different across the world. Contrast that, for example, with an area like finding terrorist propaganda, which we've actually been very successful at deploying AI tools on already. Today, as we sit here, 99% of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda content that we take down on Facebook, our AI systems flag before any human sees it. So that's a success in terms of rolling out AI tools that can proactively police and enforce safety across the community. Hate speech, I am optimistic that over a 5 to 10 year period, we will have AI tools that can get into some of the nuances, the linguistic nuances of different types of content to be more accurate in flagging things for our systems. But today we're just not there on that. So a lot of this is still reactive. People flag it to us. We have people look at it. We have policies to try to make it as not subjective as possible. But until we get it more automated, there's a higher error rate than I'm happy with.
Senator Feinstein.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, what is Facebook doing to prevent foreign actors from interfering in U.S. elections?
Thank you, Senator. This is one of my top priorities in 2018, is to get this right. One of my greatest regrets in running the company is that we were slow in identifying the Russian information operations in 2016. We expected them to do a number of more traditional cyber attacks, which we did identify and notify the campaigns that they were trying to hack into them.
Oh boy, you know the Russia thing.
The type of new information operations.
When did you?
I mean, he's holding his own thus far, though, from a place where, you know, if
right
either one of us was in that position right now, you know, that would be very, you know, yeah, egregious scenario, so to speak, right? Again, you know, but it's a guy that's, you know, running a Fortune 500 company here. It has a very great, you know,
Mexico and Pakistan and Hungary,
team around him to keep him well informed on how to, you know, conduct themselves in these kind of arenas, so to speak. And obviously, he's speaking strictly off the value of what he does on a corporate level. So he's going to speak like he's at corporate boardroom right now. It's like a corporate boardroom, you know, meeting right now, so to speak, in his head. I mean, he's still a young guy, you know, come on, he's still young, so he's like, man, these old people finna come at me, man. Whatever, you know, I'm just gonna, you know, speak from the aspect of, you know, this is how I run my company. Yeah, we got some mistakes and whatever. However, but we'll do what we can to kind of fix those. But for now, you know, it's nothing we can do for you right now, basically. And besides, you know, you don't have anything else besides Facebook. What else are you going to use, right? Without us, you have nothing.
The nature of these attacks, though,
you don't want to just go on Twitter all day. You don't want to go sit on, you know. You definitely don't want to go wake up MySpace again. So, yeah, we all you got. You know, like it or love it, hate it, whatever.
And we need to invest in keeping on getting better at this too, which is why one of the things I mentioned before is we're going to have more than 20,000 people by the end of this year working on security and content review across the company.
Speak for a moment about automated bots that spread disinformation. What are you doing to punish those who exploit your platform in that regard?
The stock is very bullish right now, guys. I've been covering my little short position way back. You know, I was in at 162. They spiked up to 163. You know, I took it like a dollar. It was like 87% loss when I ended up covering. So I'm like, you know, now I'm out of here. I'm gonna sit back and wait. Because it is Power Hour Tuesday at 3 o'clock. So couple that with the idea that people are just bullish on the you know, on the information. A lot of this probably option market buyers too. But the stock is just like, right now it's on a tear. You know, it's tearing it up. You know, it's tearing it up right now. You know, you talking about up near $4 or $5 in that little bit of time since he's been speaking.
We were able to determine.
So, you know, in that regard, he's holding his own before these senators, so to speak.
Russian regulator were operated and controlled.
You know, so I implore anybody out there looking at, you know,
so we took
take a position on this thing, especially short. You better not right now. You better not right now.
In Russia,
yeah.
As part of an operation to remove 270 fake accounts and pages, part of their broader network in Russia. That was actually not targeting international interference as much as. I'm sorry. Let me correct that. It was primarily targeting spreading misinformation in Russia itself, as well as certain Russian-speaking neighboring countries.
How many accounts of this type have you taken down?
Across, in the IRA specifically, the ones that we've pegged back to the IRA, we can identify the 470 in the American elections and the 270 that we specifically went after in Russia last week. There are many others that our systems catch, which are more difficult to attribute specifically to Russian intelligence. But The number would be in the tens of thousands of fake accounts that we remove. And I'm happy to have my team follow up with you on more information if that would be helpful.
Would you please? I think this is very important. If you knew in 2015 that Cambridge Analytica was using the information of Professor Kogan's, why didn't Facebook ban Cambridge in 2015? Why'd you wait?
Senator, that's a great question. Cambridge Analytica wasn't using our services in 2015, as far as we can tell. So this is clearly one of the questions that I asked our team as soon as I learned about this: is why did we wait until we found out about the reports last month to
and keep in mind, Facebook is definitely moving on top of this, Senate hearing, but a lot of it has to do with the SPY. It's trading in tandem with the SPY right now, and the SPY is just tearing it up to the upside. So the overall value in terms of the market sentiment is based upon, a lot of it is this news too. So people using this as a catalyst, so to speak, to buy up the market. I mean, you can look at it and see what's happening here. As soon as he starts speaking again, I watched the SPY here, and the SPY just went to rip into the upside too. So these are, again, those scenarios here where you just got to understand that, there's a lot of, again, parallel values in terms of how the market is,
At the same time, these stories touch on the very foundation of the internet.
How it moves.
And the way the websites that drive our internet economy make money. Some have professed themselves shocked that companies like Facebook and Google share user data with advertisers. Did any of these individuals ever stop to ask themselves why Facebook and Google don't charge for access? Nothing in life is free. Everything involves trade-offs. If you want something without having to pay money for it,
that's the trade-off. You sign up thinking you're just going to get the opportunity to use a free platform that will charge you, and then they're taking your data and they sell it. And then obviously that's the simple ignorance is, well, I didn't know they were selling your data. Right? We didn't know to check the the IP values, and when we was going for these AdSense people and everything else, or advertisers coming on, that they was harvesting people's data. Again, when in doubt, simple ignorance, right? Plead the fifth, without necessarily having to say I plead the fifth.
Value from users, or do they hide the ball? The consumers have the information.
So again, I like this 165 area. Just speaking here for me personally. So just give you a heads up on GP. I took me a short here at 165.88. I'm gonna scalp it because I don't think it's gonna last. See if I can get back a little bit of that what I just kind of gave away earlier. Taking it at 162, covering around about 162.80 something.
You said back then that Facebook would always be free.
And I'm just watching it intended to the SPY. So I'm literally trading it in unison to the SPY.
Senator,
I'm not going to trust it on anything, any other banner at this point.
It is our mission to try to help
knowing how the stock is trading,
to bring the world closer together. In order to do that, we believe that we need to offer
obviously
that everyone can
on the RSI, especially on the daily, the thing is highly overbought. Highly overbought. So again, we just taking the stock, with the mentality that, we're going to scalp it. Yeah, 100% right, brother Mateo. He's definitely saying what they want, pretty much what they want him to say, or what they want to hear. What obviously is what they want to hear.
That's been the experience that I've had in my.
And again, well scripted, solid value in terms of how he's been speaking thus far. Again, you got to give him credit for that, even though his sleeves ball in some ways. A lot of these CEOs are. Let's keep it 100. Yeah, that's why I don't get. I keep telling you guys, keep your psychology on tight. Don't never get emotionally invested in the people that don't necessarily pay your bills. Definitely.
That makes sense to consider.
Definitely. If they ain't paying your bills in some kind of way, personally, then obviously you have no needs to just be going to war for people that necessarily ain't, whatever.
Into law.
But whatever.
One is around
that's just my,
having a simple and practical set of ways that
you. So I'm up $1 now in profit. So I got that back a little bit that I,
laying out these
lost earlier. My short is at 160, 165, 88. Yeah, something like that.
Implemented in a way where
so I'm up 166 bucks. I only took small share, so I didn't go heavy. I'm not crazy. I took 170 shares short at 165.86. Excuse me. Again, just scalping. So I'm up 186 bucks, 140 now, whatever.
This is the most important principle.
But I'm gonna see if it bounces here.
Every piece of content that you share on Facebook, you own and you have complete control over who sees it and how you share it, and you can remove it at any time. That's why every day, about 100 billion times a day, people come to one of our services and either post a photo or send a message to someone because they know that they have that control, and that who they say it's going to go to is going to be who sees the content. And I think that control is something that's important that I think should apply to every service.
Also, I also shorted Tesla guys on the pop. I shorted Tesla as well on the pop because when Facebook got the ripping, Tesla got the ripping too. So I was waiting for Tesla all day. Right. I took a small position on the early, scalped for a little bit, got out of it. Right. Now I'm looking to get it again. I had a couple trades I had earlier too that was swing that was okay when I came to the market a little later today, but a couple of those turned out well. I had the earnings swing in MSM that did well, and I had a little bit of Spotify again that I took, and I ended up getting burnt on that just a little bit, not a lot. And then what else did I have? Cohen as well. Cohen got me. That's when I took a loss on Cohen, CONE.
Do you know who Palantir
So basically, those two that burnt me a little bit today. But as of now, again, we're fighting back to get back that what we lost. Using Facebook again off this top here and watching the SPY here in tandem. Once again, the SPY is kind of pulling back here, which is natural.
Senator,
we got 35 minutes before the bell.
Do you think Palantir taught
I'm just looking,
Analytica's press reports
do a little something here on the back end of the day.
how to do these tactics?
Because obviously right now I'm in the red.
Senator,
I'm in the red right now as of now.
Do you think that Palantir has ever scraped data from Facebook?
Senator, I'm not aware of that.
Uh-oh, here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
It's gonna get real.
Do you think that during the 2016 campaign, as Cambridge Analytica was providing support to the Trump campaign under Project Alamo, were there any Facebook people involved in that sharing of technique and information?
Senator, we provided support to the Trump campaign similar to what we provide to any advertiser or campaign who asks for it.
So that was a yes. Is that a yes?
Senator, can you repeat the specific question?
Uh-oh, here you go.
Again, specifically you're asking.
He wasn't ready. Like Kevin Hart, he wasn't ready.
Cambridge Analytica worked with the Trump campaign to refine tactics, and were Facebook employees involved in that?
Senator, I don't know that our employees were involved with Cambridge Analytica, although I know that we did help out the Trump campaign overall in sales support in the same way that we do with other campaigns.
So they may have been involved in all working together during that time period. Maybe that's something your investigation will find out.
Senator, I can certainly have my team get back to you on any specifics there that I don't know sitting here today.
Let's see, here it comes now.
Total information awareness. You know what I'm talking about?
No, I do not.
Okay. Total information awareness was 2003. John Ashcroft and others trying to do similar things to what I think is behind all of this. Geopolitical forces.
So it always takes a woman energy to kind of really,
process.
shake up that kind of good old, good old boy mentality. Like, no, she's gonna dig into him.
Which is another acquisition.
She reminds you of Senator Elizabeth Warren.
You are from the 2011.
And look at the stock going down there. Here we go. I needed to break this 164, man. Get down to 163. It's definitely gonna be lights out.
Is this guy outfoxing the foxes, or is he going along with what is a major trend in an information age to try to harvest information?
Right. That's what I knew she was going there.
And so
I knew she was going there.
My question to you is, do you see that those applications, that those companies, Palantir?
So we up $300 on Facebook now, guys. We're back in the green. We were down a little bit. Obviously a couple of other regular trades earlier, but we're in the green now.
Senator, I'm not.
We took that top on Facebook.
I'm not sure specifically.
170 shares at 165.86.
These issues around information access.
Again, watching the SPY though, I'm watching the intent of the SPY. Forget what he's saying. I'm watching the SPY because obviously it can bounce easy.
Palantir does. WhatsApp collects very little information, and I think is less likely to have the kind of issues because of the way that the service is architected. But certainly, I think that these are broad issues across the tech industry.
Well, I guess given the track record where Facebook is and why
we're up $340 on Tesla as well. We're up $340 on Tesla as well.
And the fact that people like John Bolton
basically was an investor, and New York Times article earlier, I guess it was actually last month, that the Bolton PAC was obsessed with how America was becoming limp-wristed and spineless and had wanted research and messaging for national security issues. So the fact that, you know, there are a lot of people who are interested in this larger effort. And what I think my constituents want to know is, was this discussed at your board meetings? And what are the applications and interests that are being discussed without putting real teeth into this? We don't want to come back to this situation again. I believe you have all the talent. My question is whether you have all the will to help us solve this problem.
Yes, Senator. So data privacy and foreign interference in elections are certainly topics that we have discussed at the board meeting. These are some of the biggest issues that the company has faced, and we feel a huge responsibility to get these right.
Do you believe the European regulations should be applied here in the U.S.?
He'll start sweating in a minute.
Everyone in the world deserves good privacy protection. And
you're having fun a little bit, but yeah, this is interesting watching this.
The exact same regulation, I would guess that it would be somewhat different because we have somewhat different sensibilities in the U.S. as to other countries. We're committed to rolling out the controls and the affirmative consent.
So let's start the bounce, guys. It did bounce. It bounced at the 164.14 level, and it picked back up until the 164.50 level.
So I think
now this is where it gets interesting because that dip was very serious.
Something similar in the U.S.
So you're gonna get some more buying coming in here, and that's all the short sellers took some short covered some of their positions, which makes this and inspired obviously pulling back up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Zuckerberg. Thank you for being with us. My question is going to be sort of a follow-up on what Senator Hatch was talking about, and let me agree with basically.
Yes, my Tesla short is going well. I shorted the pop on Tesla too. So I'm excited about that because obviously they had some downgrades. Goldman Sachs and a few other people downgraded Tesla, but Tesla was up only because option market was buying it. That bought it previously before this news came out, and also that the fact that the president of China, Xi, had the whole scenario that he's going to lessen the regulation on automobile tariffs in terms of the metal, which obviously Tesla benefits from. So that gave the stock also a boost. All right, so again, it hit me a little bit earlier. I made a little off of it, took a little bit off, it got me a little bit, then I got back again on, got back in and waited it out. And here I am taking the top here at above 306 on Tesla. Up $580 on that trade right now. All right, so again, I was red on the day until late in the day because I started trading late, obviously. But went down a good significant amount when I shouldn't have. But that's the market. You can't get it right all the time. But I'm back in the green now. So we've been green every day for the last 3 weeks. So today's we saved so far, barely, but I'm safe. I'm up $350 on the day in terms of total profit.
I would differentiate between ISPs, which I consider to be the pipes of the internet, and the platforms like
but I am watching
Facebook
everything very
Google,
closely here.
Or Twitter, YouTube, that are the apps. Or
waiting for Tesla to dump a little bit more here. That'll be great. This might end up being a home run trade in Tesla. Up, $600 on that trade right now by taking that top on Tesla.
There might be areas where there needs to be more regulation in one and less in the other. But I think that there are going to be other places where there needs to be more regulation of the other type. Specifically, though, on the pipes, one of the important issues that I think we face and have debated is
when you say pipes, you mean
ISPs.
Yeah, ISPs.
Yeah.
See, you're talking that old corporate talk. And Senator's like, man, I don't know nothing about the pipes, man. Unless you're talking about some dual pipes, right, on a car. And I got a set of Flowmaster on my old Chrysler. But I don't know nothing about this pipe that you're talking about, young man.
When I was getting started building Facebook at Harvard, I only had one option for an ISP to use. And if I had to pay extra in order to
name dropping now, when I was at Harvard,
potentially be seen or used
you
by
guys know, I was a Harvard dropout. Some of you guys wouldn't even got into Harvard. I was a Harvard dropout.
And let me just say, we'll have to follow up on this, but I think you and I agree this is going to be one of the major items of debate if we have to go forward and do this from a governmental standpoint. Let me just move on to another couple of items. Is it true that, as was recently publicized, that Facebook collects the call and text histories of its users that use Android phones?
Senator, we have an app called Messenger for sending messages to your Facebook friends, and that app offers people an option to sync their text messages into the messaging app, and to make it so that so you can have one app where it has both your texts and your Facebook messages in one place. We also allow people the option of
you can opt in or out of that.
Yes, it is opt
out.
It is opt in. You have to affirmatively say that you want to sync that information before we get access.
Unless you opt in, that you don't collect that call and text history.
That is correct.
And is that true for, is this practice done at all with minors, or do you make an exception there for persons aged 13 to 17?
I do not know. We can follow up.
Okay, do that. Let's do that. One other thing. There have been reports that Facebook can track a user's internet browsing activity even after that user has logged off of the Facebook platform. Can you confirm whether or not this is true?
Senator, I want to make sure I get this accurate, so it would probably be better to have my team follow up.
You don't know?
Uh-oh, here it comes.
People use cookies on the internet, and that you can probably correlate activity between sessions. We do that for a number of reasons, including security and including measuring ads to make sure that the ad experiences are most effective, which of course people can opt out of. But I want to make sure that I'm precise in my answer. So
when you get back to me, sir, would you also let us know how Facebook discloses to its users that engaging in this type of tracking gives us that result?
Yes.
And thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Wicker. Senator Leahy's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. I assume Facebook's been served with subpoenas from the special counsel Mueller's office. Is that correct?
Yes.
Have you or anyone at Facebook been interviewed by the special counsel's office?
Yes.
Have you been interviewed?
I have not. I have not. I believe so, and I want to be careful here because that
it's about to get real.
Special counsel is confidential, and I want to make sure that in an open session I'm not revealing something that's confidential.
I understand. That's why I made clear that you have been contacted. You have had subpoenas.
Actually, let me clarify that. I actually am not aware of a subpoena. I believe that there may be, but I know we're working with them.
Thank you. 6 months ago, your general counsel promised us you were taking steps to prevent Facebook from serving what I would call an unwitting co-conspirator, Russian interference. But these unverified divisive pages are on Facebook today. They look a lot like the anonymous groups of Russian agents use.
They're actually holding up a board at the Senate hearing showing a Confederate flag and there's hate speech and white supremacist kind of monologue stuff. Wow.
Senator, are you asking about those specifically?
I knew his guy was going to come at him hard. You heard his tone.
We actually announced a major change to our ads and pages policies that we will be verifying the identity.
This is when he overhead. So he's like, no, not today, young buck.
I am not familiar with those pieces of content specifically.
But if you started this policy a week ago, you'd be able to verify them?
We are working on that now. What we're doing is we're going to verify the identity of any advertiser who's running a political or issue-related ad. This is basically what the Honest Ads Act is proposing, and we're following that. And we're also going to do that for pages.
But you get an answer on these.
I'm not familiar with those specific cases.
Will you find out the answer and get back to me?
I'll have my team get back to you. I do think it's worth adding, though, that we're going to do the same verification of the identity and location of admins who are running large pages. So that way, even if they aren't going to be buying ads in our system, that will make it significantly harder for Russian interference efforts or other inauthentic efforts to try to spread misinformation through the network.
Insofar as it's been going on for some time, some might say this about that. 6 months ago, I asked your general counsel about Facebook's role as a breeding ground for hate speech against Rohingya refugees. Recently, UN investigators blamed Facebook for playing a role in inciting possible genocide in Myanmar, and there has been genocide there. Now, you say you used AI to find this. This is a type of content I'm referring to. It calls for the death of a Muslim journalist. Now, that threat went straight through your detection system. It spread very quickly. And then
this guy got
attempt after attempt after
panels he's holding up in the Senate hearing, showing this stuff, breaking it down to this dude. Like, answer this, bro. Give me some answers to this.
Why couldn't it be removed within 24 hours?
Wow, he's getting it.
Senator, what's happening in Myanmar is a terrible tragedy, and we need to do more.
We all agree with that.
Okay.
But UN investigators have blamed Facebook for playing a role in the genocide. We all agree it's terrible. How can you dedicate, and will you dedicate, the resources to make sure such hate speech is taken down within 24 hours?
Yes, we're working on this. And there are 3 specific things that we're doing. One is we're hiring dozens of more Burmese language content reviewers, because hate speech is very language specific. It's hard to do it without people who speak the local language, and we need to ramp up our effort there dramatically. Second is we're working with civil society in Myanmar to identify specific hate figures so we can take down their accounts rather than specific pieces of content. And third is we're standing up a product team to do specific product changes in Myanmar and other countries that may have similar issues in the future to prevent this from happening.
Senator Cruz and I sent a letter to Apple asking what they're going to do about Chinese censorship. My question, I'll place.
That'd be great. Thank you, Senator Lee.
Place for the record, I want to know what you will do about Chinese censorship when they come to you.
Senator Graham's up next.
Thank you. Are you familiar with Andrew Boswell?
Well, I know you're happy that senator there finished with it now.
Said, so we can
they said a week behind Lindsey Graham gonna say, he's man, that's a weasel. Lindsey Graham, where would you start with that guy? But oh well, let me just shut up and let's see what he says.
Anything that allows us to connect more people more often is de facto good. Do you agree with that?
No, Senator, I do not. And as context, Boz wrote that. Boz is what we call him internally. He wrote that as an internal note. We had a lot of discussion internally. I disagreed with it at the time that he wrote it. If you looked at the comments on the internal discussion, the vast majority of people internally did too.
That you did a poor job as a CEO communicating your displeasure with such thoughts. Because if he had understood where you were at, he would never said it to begin with.
Wow, here we go.
Well, Senator, we try to run our company in a way where people can express different opinions internally.
Well, this is an opinion that really disturbs me. And if somebody worked for me that said this, I'd fire him. Who's your biggest competitor?
Senator, we have a lot of competitors.
Who's your biggest?
I think the categories of, do you want just one? I'm not sure I can give
here it comes.
A bunch.
Here it comes.
So there are 3 categories that I would.
You don't have competitors, man. That's what the guy getting at.
Platforms, so Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, we overlap with them in different ways.
Do they provide the same service you provide?
Right. You know what he's saying.
In different ways, different parts of it, yes.
If I buy a Ford and it doesn't work well and I don't like it, I can buy a Chevy. If I'm upset with Facebook, what's the equivalent product that I can go sign up for?
Well, there's the second category that I was going to talk about.
I'm not talking about categories. I'm talking about, is there real competition you face? Because car companies face a lot of competition. If they make a defective car, it gets out in the world, people stop buying that car, they buy another one. Is there an alternative to Facebook in the private sector?
Yes,
Got him.
the average American uses 8 different apps to communicate with their friends and stay in touch with people, ranging from texting apps to email.
The same service you provide.
Well, we provide a number of different services.
Is Twitter the same as what you do?
It overlaps with a portion of what we do.
You don't think you have a monopoly?
It certainly doesn't feel like that to me.
Okay.
Ooh.
It doesn't. So Instagram, you bought Instagram. Why did you buy Instagram?
Because they were very talented app developers who were making good use of our platform and understood our values.
It was a good business decision. My point is that one way to regulate a company is through competition, through government regulation. Here's the question that all of us got to answer. What do we tell our constituents, given what's happened here, why we should let you self-regulate? What would you tell people in South Carolina that, given all the things we've just discovered here, it's a good idea for us to rely upon you to regulate your own business practices?
Well, Senator, my position is not that there should be no regulation. I think the internet is increasingly...
Do you embrace regulation?
I think the real question, as the internet becomes more important in people's lives, is what is the right regulation, not whether there should be.
But you as a company welcome regulation?
I think if it's the right regulation, then yes.
You think the Europeans have it right?
I think that they get things right.
Have you ever submitted? That's true. So would you work with us in terms of what regulations you think are necessary in your industry?
Absolutely.
Okay. Would you submit to us some proposed regulations?
Yes, and I'll have my team follow up with you so that way we can have this discussion across the different categories where I think that this discussion needs to happen.
Look forward to it. When you sign up for Facebook, you sign up for terms of service. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Okay. It says the terms govern your use of Facebook and the products, features, apps, services, technologies, software we offer. Facebook's products are products, except where we expressly state that separate terms and not these apply. I'm a lawyer. I have no idea what that means. But when you look at terms of service, this is what you get. Do you think the average consumer understands what they're signing up for?
I don't think that the average person likely reads that whole document. Yeah. But I think that there are different ways that we can communicate that and have a responsibility to do so.
Do you agree with me that you better come up with different ways because this ain't working?
Boom.
Well, Senator, I think in certain areas that is true. And I think in other areas, like the core part of what we do, right? If you think about just at the most basic level, people come to Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, 100 billion times a day to share a piece of content or a message with a specific set of people. And I think that that basic functionality, people understand because we have the controls in line every time. And given the volume of the activity and the value that people tell us that they're getting from that, I think that that control in line does seem to be working fairly well. Now, we can always do better, and there are the services are complex, and there is more to it than just, you go and you post a photo. So I agree that in many places we could do better. But I think for the core of the service, it actually is quite clear.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, I think we all agree that what happened here was bad. You acknowledged it was a breach of trust. And the way I explain it to my constituents is that if someone breaks into my apartment with a crowbar and they take my stuff, it is just like if the manager gave them the keys or if they didn't have any locks on the doors. It's still a breach. It's still a break-in. And I believe we need to have laws and rules that are sophisticated as the brilliant products that you've developed here. And we just haven't done that yet. And one of the areas that I focused on is the election. And I appreciate the support that you and Facebook and now Twitter actually have given to the Honest Ads Act, a bill that you mentioned that I'm leading with Senator McCain and Senator Warner. And I just want to be clear as we work to pass this law so that we have the same rules in place to disclose political ads and issue ads as we do for TV and radio, as well as disclaimers, that you're going to take early action as soon as June, I heard, before this election, so that people can view these ads, including issue ads. Is that correct?
That is correct, Senator. And I just want to take a moment before I go into this in more detail to thank you for your leadership on this. This, I think, is an important area for the whole industry to move on. The two specific things that we're doing are, one is around transparency. So now you're going to be able to go and click on any advertiser or any page on Facebook and see all of the ads that they're running. So that actually brings advertising online on Facebook to an even higher standard than what you would have on TV or print media, because there's nowhere where you can see all of the TV ads that someone is running, for example, whereas you will be able to see now on Facebook whether this campaign or third party is saying different messages to different types of people. I think that that's a really important element of transparency. Then the other really important piece is around verifying every single advertiser who's going to be running political or issue ads.
I appreciate that. And Senator Warner and I have also called on Google and the other platforms to do the same. So memo to the rest of you. We have to get this done or we're going to have a patchwork of ads. And I hope that you'll be working with us to pass this bill. Is that right?
We will.
Okay, thank you. Now on the subject of Cambridge Analytica, were these people, the 87 million people, users, concentrated in certain states? Are you able to figure out where they're from?
I do not have that information with me, but we can follow up with your office.
Okay, because as we know, that election was close and it was only thousands of votes in certain states. You've also estimated that roughly 126 million people may have been shown content from a Facebook page associated with the Internet Research Agency. Have you determined whether any of those people were the same Facebook users whose data was shared with Cambridge Analytica? Are you able to make that determination?
Senator, we're investigating that now. We believe that it is entirely possible that there will be a connection there.
Okay, that seems like a big deal as we look back at that last election. Former Cambridge Analytica employee Christopher Wiley has said that the data that it improperly obtained, that Cambridge Analytica improperly obtained from Facebook users, could be stored in Russia. Do you agree that that's a possibility?
Sorry, are you asking if Cambridge Analytica's data could be stored in Russia?
That's what he said this weekend on a Sunday show.
Senator, I don't have any specific knowledge that would suggest that, but one of the steps that we need to take now is go do a full audit of all of Cambridge Analytica's systems to understand what they're doing, whether they still have any data, to make sure that they remove all the data. If they don't, we're going to take legal action against them to do so. That audit, we have temporarily seeded that in order to let the UK government complete their government investigation first, because of course a government investigation takes precedence over a company doing that. But we are committed to completing this full audit and getting to the bottom of what's going on here, so that way we can have more answers to this.
Okay, you earlier stated publicly and here that you would support some privacy rules so that everyone's playing by the same rules here. And you also said here that you should have notified customers earlier. Would you support a rule that would require you to notify your users of a breach within 72 hours?
Senator, that makes sense to me, and I think we should have our team follow up with yours to discuss the details around that more.
Thank you. I just think part of this was when people don't even know that their data has been breached, that's a huge problem, and I also think we get to solutions faster when we get that information out there. Thank you, and we look forward to passing this bill. We'd love to pass it before the election on the honest ads, and looking forward to better disclosure of this election. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Senator Blunt's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, she gave him a pass pretty much.
I saw you not too long after I entered the Senate in 2011. I told you when I sent my business cards down to be printed, they came back from the Senate print shop with the message that was the first business card they'd ever printed a Facebook address on. There are days when I've regretted that, but more days when we get lots of information that we need to get. There are days when I wonder if Facebook Friends is a little misstated. It doesn't seem like I have those every single day. But, you know, the platform you've created is really important. Now, my son, Charlie, who's 13, is dedicated to Instagram. So people want to be sure I mention him while I was here with you. I haven't printed that on my card yet. I will say that, but I think we have that account as well. Lots of ways to connect people. And the information,
come on, man, get to it.
Is an important commodity, and it's what makes your business work.
All right, guys, we got like 6 minutes before the bell here.
I wonder about
So obviously going into the close here with him speaking, it's pretty much got the sentiment at this point. Again, he definitely caused the stock to spike up, and notably so, it's at they're saying it's the highest it's been since the month of April. And excuse me, it's month of I think it's March. I mean not March.
In order to make sure
the highest has been in April thus far. I guess what they were saying possibly.
Between their devices.
And that would also include offline,
which is obvious, because it was obviously beat up, and we took it down from 180 something down to 140.
Some device they went through Facebook on. Is that right?
Senator, I want to make sure we get this right, so I want to have my team follow up with you on that afterwards.
Well, that doesn't seem that complicated to me. Now, you understand this better than I do, but maybe you can explain to me why that's complicated. Do you track devices that an individual who uses Facebook has that is connected to the device that they use for their Facebook connection, but not necessarily connected to Facebook?
I'm not sure the answer to that question.
Really?
Yes. There may be some data that is necessary to provide the service that we do, but I don't have that on sitting here today, so that's something that I would want to follow up.
Yeah, they're definitely precedent. This guy here speaking here, he kind of used the old build break build tactic. He came in, build him up a little bit, talk about from a biggest perspective. The Facebook stick me on my business card, but I didn't like it. But my son uses it, but he want me to make sure I let you know he use it. But here we go.
Before I entered into a Facebook.
Yes, Senator. So there are two ways that we do this. One is we try to be exhaustive in the legal documents around the terms of service and privacy policies.
So again, we're going into the bail 4 minutes for the bail. It's going to be some people taking profit, selling off this pop. So expect this stock to pull back some here, which is notable. Again, people wrote the pop up. They're going to take their profits. They're not going to necessarily sit around, not those dieharders, right? They're going to take some profit and get up out of here. They don't know what the stock's going to do after hours, etc., etc. And he got to speak again tomorrow, guys. Keep in mind, he also has to speak again tomorrow. So this is not just the end all be all.
And if they do, is that a relatively new addition to what you do?
Senator, I'm sorry.
Am I able to opt out? Am I able to say it's okay for you to track what I'm saying on Facebook, but I don't want you to track what I'm texting to somebody else off Facebook on an Android phone?
Oh, okay. Yes, Senator. In general, Facebook is not collecting data from other apps that you use. There may be some specific things about the device that you're using that Facebook needs to understand in order to offer the service. But if you're using Google or you're using some texting app, unless you specifically opt in that you want to share the texting app information, Facebook wouldn't see that.
Has it always been that way? Or is that a recent addition to how you deal with those other ways that I might communicate?
Senator, my understanding is that that is how the mobile operating systems are architected.
So you don't have bundled permissions for how I can agree to what devices I may use that you may have contact with? Do you bundle that permission, or am I able to want it individually? Say,
I don't know. This guy even know what he's asking.
For you to watch and what I don't want you to watch, and I think we may have to take that for the record based on everybody else's time.
Thank you, Senator Blunt. Next up, Senator Durbin.
That was confusing.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I didn't even understand what he was saying.
Would you be comfortable sharing with us the name of the hotel you stayed in last night?
Wow. Got him. Got him. Got him.
If you've messaged anybody this week, would you share with us the names of the people you've messaged?
Got him.
Senator, no, I would probably not choose to do that publicly here.
Got him.
I think that might be what this is all about.
Got him.
Your right to privacy, the limits of your right to privacy.
Wow, that was very sharp and tactful.
In modern America, in the name of, quote, connecting people around the world.
And he's drinking water.
Question.
His throat got dry real fast, and he's drinking water.
Facebook's
Got him.
who they're sending it to, and whether they ever asked me in advance my permission to do that. Is that a fair thing for a user of Facebook to expect?
Yes, Senator. I think everyone should have control over how their information is used. And as we've talked about in some of the other questions, I think that is laid out in some of the documents. But more importantly, you want to give people control in the product itself. So,
all right, so 15 seconds, guys, before the bell. 15 seconds before the bell here, guys. 15 seconds before the bell.
That every day people come to our services to choose to share photos, to send messages.
Well, 3 seconds. There we go, guys. There we go. There we go. There we go, guys. Awesome day again. Hope everybody ended the day green. Very crazy day. You know, again, while this grilling is going on Capitol Hill right now, just watching the market overall just spike up today was very interesting. You know, despite itself, obviously the Dow itself picked up well over, well, the Dow picked up 1.78 points, a percent, 0.78 value today. S&P 1.67%. NASDAQ obviously the big win on the day, 2.07%, and the Russell at 1.07%. So we obviously had a nice little rally today. You know, it wasn't that weird like we saw yesterday, how the market sold off on the back end of the day. So it held its gains pretty well. So again, yeah, interesting watching the market today with all this stuff that was going on with China, Facebook, Trump. You know, obviously his lawyer getting his, getting raided by the FBI, subpoenaing him for fraud, all kind of stuff like this. You know, just crazy day in the market. You know, stuff like this we live for either way because there's opportunity within this thing somewhere if we know how to access it properly. So again, I hope everybody ended their day green. You know, you made smart decisions. You didn't kind of find yourself out there too much. Obviously, I made a couple bad decisions today. Definitely going on record and saying that, right? You know, to me, costly. Even though, So again, even though I'm still green on the day. You know, not by a lot, but I'm up. You know, as of now, roughly about $200 on the day. You know, so again, just that's the market. You know, outside of that, could have been a $1,500 day like we had yesterday. But we'll take this $200 and run for the door and be happy about it and grateful, which I am very grateful. All right, so again, just watching the market here going to, finishing out here. Right now, again, it's not looking too well for old Junebug here, old Mark Zuckerberg here. So again, this, I have to, leave it open for a little bit here, going until, after hours here.
And there wasn't an app out there.
And we'll see how the stock responds after hours a little bit. Again, the SPY itself is pulling back a little bit, which is natural since the market is over. I'm still short my position in Tesla. That stock is up $400 right now. So again, that turned out to be well. I'm gonna sit in that one for a while too. Again, I like those downgrades. I think those are going to be golden at some point. Especially the market turn.
The word in general, the phrase in general, seems to suggest that in some circumstances it will be shared with third parties.
No, it will not.
All right.
I like the senator. He's very sharp.
That someone having reached adult age, having grown up with messenger kids, should be allowed to delete the data that you've collected?
Senator, yes. As a matter of fact, when you become 13, which is our legal limit or limiter, we don't allow people under the age of 13 to use Facebook.
But there are 10-year-olds that got Facebook. There are 11-year-olds that got Facebook. There are 9-year-olds that have a Facebook account.
So I think it's a good idea to consider making sure that all that information.
Right, but you want everybody, adults licensed, right? Random people to give up their license, for them to be on Facebook. Again, your license was given to Facebook if you did that to kind of check your validity. And Cambridge Analytica probably had access to your license. Your government state ID probably was, again, used by Cambridge Analytica and these other companies. That's the question that needs to be asked. We know you guys ask for people license and state IDs. Did Cambridge Analytica also get a hold of that data? These people, people's license and so forth.
I know up until
so hey, again, guys, be very careful who you give so much access to your life.
Facebook was move fast and break things.
Be very careful. Yeah, I know you have fun, whatever, but we need to have a moment of clarity here. Be careful who you give people, how much access you give to people in terms of your life.
Sounds much more boring, but my question is, during the time it was Facebook's mantra or motto to move fast and break things, do you think some of the misjudgments, perhaps mistakes that you've admitted to here were as a result of that culture or that attitude, particularly as regards to personal privacy of the information of your subscribers?
Senator, I do think that we made mistakes because of that, but the broadest mistakes that we made here are not taking a broad enough view of our responsibility. And that wasn't a matter, the move fast cultural value is more tactical around whether engineers can ship things and different ways that we operate. But I think the big mistake that we've made looking back on this is viewing our responsibility as just building tools rather than viewing our whole responsibility as making sure that those tools are used for good.
Well, I appreciate that, because previously or earlier in the past, we've been told that platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and the like are neutral platforms, and the people who own and run those for profit, and I'm not criticizing doing something for profit in this country, but they bore no responsibility for the content. You agree now that Facebook and other social media platforms are not neutral platforms, but bear some responsibility for the content?
I agree that we're responsible for the content. And I think that there's one of the big societal questions that I think we're going to need to answer is the current framework that we have is based on this reactive model that assumed that there weren't AI tools that could proactively tell whether something was terrorist content or something bad. So it naturally relied on requiring people to flag for a company and then the company needing to take reasonable action. In the future, we're going to have tools that are going to be able to identify more types of bad content. And I think that there are moral and legal obligation questions that I think we'll have to wrestle with as a society about when we want to require companies to take action proactively on certain of those things, and when that gets in the way of...
I appreciate that. I have 2 minutes left to ask you questions. So you interestingly, the terms of what do you call it? The terms of service is a legal document which discloses to your subscribers how their information is going to be used, how Facebook is going to operate. And but you concede that you doubt everybody reads or understands that legalese, those terms of service. So is that to suggest that the consent that people give subject to that terms of service is not informed consent? In other words, they may not read it, and even if they read it, they may not understand it.
I just think we have a broader responsibility than what the law requires. So
I appreciate that. What I'm asking about in terms of what your subscribers understand in terms of how their data is going to be used. But let me go to the terms of service. Under paragraph number 2, you say you own all of the content and information you post on Facebook. That's what you've told us here today a number of times. So if I choose to terminate my Facebook account, can I bar Facebook or any third parties from using the data that I had previously supplied for any purpose whatsoever?
Yes, Senator. If you delete your account, we should get rid of all of your information.
You should, or
we do?
Do you?
We do.
How about third parties that you have contracted with to use some of that underlying information, perhaps to target advertising for themselves? You can't. Do you claw back that information as well, or does that remain in their custody?
Well, Senator, this is actually a very important question. I'm glad you brought this up because there's a very common misperception about Facebook that we sell data to advertisers. And we do not sell data to advertisers.
Well,
we don't sell data to
clearly rent it.
What we allow is for advertisers to tell us who they want to reach.
To pivot that very quickly.
So an advertiser comes to us and says, all right, I'm a ski shop and I want to sell skis to women then we might have some sense because people shared skiing related content or said they were interested in that. They shared whether they're a woman, and then we can show the ads to the right people without that data ever changing hands and going to the advertiser. So that's a very fundamental part of how our model works and something that is often misunderstood. So I appreciate that you brought that up.
Thank you, Senator Cornyn. We had indicated earlier on that we would take a couple of breaks, give our witness an opportunity. And I think we've been going now for just under 2 hours. So I think what we'll do is
do a few more.
Berger, are you want to keep going?
Maybe 15 minutes.
Okay. All right, we'll keep going. Senator Blumenthal is up next.
He's acting like he had a board meeting. Yeah, we 15 more minutes.
Commence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And that's coming off the back end. Is someone probably whispering in his ear that the stock is going up. The stock is doing good. Keep talking.
Today, and you told the world
basically
Facebook was deceived by Alexander Cohen when he sold user information to Cambridge Analytica, correct?
Yes.
I want to show you the terms of service that Alexander Cohen provided to Facebook. And note for you that, in fact, Facebook was on notice that he could sell that user information. Have you seen these terms of service before?
I have not.
Who in Facebook was responsible for seeing those terms of service that put you on notice that that information could be sold?
Senator, our app review team would be responsible for that.
Has anyone been fired on that app review team?
Senator.
Wow.
Not because of this.
Doesn't that term of service conflict with the FTC order that Facebook was under at that very time, that this term of service was, in fact, provided to Facebook? And you'll note that the FTC order specifically requires Facebook to protect privacy. Isn't there a conflict there?
Senator, it certainly appears that we should have been aware that this app developer submitted a term that was in conflict with the rules of the platform.
Well, what happened here was, in effect, willful blindness. It was heedless and reckless, which, in fact, amounted to a violation of the FTC consent decree. Would you agree?
No, Senator.
Wow.
My understanding is that is not that this was a violation of the consent decree, but as I've said a number of times today, I think we need to take a broader view of our responsibility around privacy than just what is mandated in the current laws.
Well, here is my reservation, Mr. Zuckerberg, and I apologize for interrupting you, but my time is limited. We've seen the apology tours before. You have refused to acknowledge even an ethical obligation to have reported this violation of the FTC consent decree. And we have letters, we've had contacts with Facebook employees, and I'm going to submit a letter for the record from Sandy Karakilis, with your permission, that indicates not only a lack of resources, but lack of attention to privacy. And so my
hot seat
reservation about your testimony today is that I don't see how you can change your business model unless there are specific rules of the road. Your business model is to monetize user information, to maximize profit over privacy. And unless there are specific rules and requirements enforced by an outside agency, I have no assurance that these kinds of vague commitments are going to produce action. So
you guys got to see the look on Mark Zuckerberg's face right now. I'm pretty sure he starts sweating underneath his collar a little bit. He probably got some dirt ring around his collar right now on this question here.
Consent Act, which I'm joining. Don't you agree that companies?
His face, I mean, you can tell he's like, uh-oh, damn.
Provide users with clear, plain information about how they're
He's hearing in the back of his head government oversight.
Specific.
That's basically what's circulating in his head right now is government oversight. This man want to get in here and change some rules to stop me from getting my money.
Senator, I do generally agree with
yeah, it probably is, Brett. You're right. That's what I was saying. That's why he's like, I'll take some more questions when he thought the stock was still up. Right now, he probably don't feel so good about taking those extra 15 minutes of questioning.
Makes sense to discuss, and I think the details around this matter a lot.
Would you agree that users should be able to access all of their information?
Senator, yes, of course.
All of the information that you collect as a result of purchases from data brokers, as well as tracking them.
Senator, we have already a download your information tool that allows people to see and to take out all of the information that they've put into Facebook or that Facebook knows about them. So yes, I agree with that. We already have that.
I have a number of other specific requests that you agree to support as part of legislation. I think legislation is necessary. The rules of the road have to be the result of congressional action. Facebook has participated recently in the fight against the scourge of sex trafficking, and the bill that we've just passed, it will be signed into law tomorrow. SESTA, the Stop Exploiting Sex Trafficking Act, was the result of our cooperation. I hope that we can cooperate on this kind of measure as well.
So you guys know about the young lady, right, that sold her virginity using Facebook and other social media apps to some Hollywood actor for like 1.4 million, something like that, using Facebook. I mean, we all know the right stuff that go on Facebook. We don't need to say act like we don't know. We know, right? So, from a senatorial perspective, or congressional perspective, they gotta sauce over the question, so to speak. But we know that all that stuff goes down on Facebook. Child pornography, sex trafficking,
Senator, here's what we think about
you name it.
I don't believe that
Hate, everything.
There is certain content that clearly we do not allow, right? Hate speech, terrorist content, nudity, anything that makes people
feel
safe in the community.
They'll ban you and I from Facebook.
That's why we generally try to refer
for putting up probably 2 thumbs in the caption saying, we all we got, or something like that. They'll ban you for that. They'll ban you from that.
Section 230 immunity under the CDA is that you are a neutral public forum. Do you consider yourself a neutral public forum, or are you engaged in political speech, which is your right under the First Amendment?
Well, Senator, our goal is certainly not to engage in political speech. I'm not that familiar with the specific legal language of the law that you speak to, so I would need to follow up with you on that. I'm just trying to lay out how broadly I think about this.
Well, Mr. Zuckerberg, I will say there are a great many Americans who I think are deeply concerned that Facebook and other tech companies are engaged in a pervasive pattern of bias and political censorship. There have been numerous instances with Facebook. In May of 2016, Gizmodo reported that Facebook—
This is Senator Ted Cruz speaking now.
—suppressed conservative stories from trending news, including stories about CPAC, including stories about Mitt Romney, including stories about the Lois Lerner IRS scandal, including stories about Glenn Beck. In addition to that, Facebook has initially shut down the Chick-fil-A Appreciation Day page, has blocked a post of a Fox News reporter, has blocked over 24 Catholic pages, and most recently blocked Trump supporters Diamond and Silk's page with 1.
No, he didn't go there.
After determining
no, he didn't go there.
Were, quote, unsafe to the community. To a great many Americans, that appears to be a pervasive pattern of—
He went there with the Diamond and Silk thing, guys. Y'all not posted that, what 3-4 days ago?
A few things about this.
No, he didn't.
I understand where that concern is coming from, because Facebook and the tech industry are located in Silicon Valley, which is an extremely left-leaning place. And this is actually a concern.
He brought Diamond and Silk into a congressional hearing. These two, weird wenches. He brought them. I didn't heard it all. I didn't heard it all.
Aware of any ad or page that has been taken down from Planned Parenthood?
Senator.
Wow, he's in the Planned Parenthood. Wow.
Sorry.
How about MoveOn.org? freedomfile.org?
I'm not specifically aware of those.
How about any Democratic candidate for office?
I'm not specifically aware. I mean, I'm not sure.
Wow, hearing it from the political party perspective. He's showing that Facebook is, biased toward democratic or liberal agendas, that over conservative agendas.
No, Senator, we do not generally ask people about their political orientation when they're joining the company.
So as CEO, have you ever made hiring or firing decisions based on political positions or what candidates they supported?
No.
Why was Palmer Luckey fired?
That is a specific personnel matter that seems like it would be inappropriate.
You just made a specific representation.
Wow, they got him. Got him.
I can commit that it was not because of a political view.
Do you know of those 15 to 20,000 people engaged in content review, how many, if any, have ever supported financially a Republican candidate for office?
Senator, I do not know that.
Your testimony says it is not enough that we just connect people. We have to make sure those connections are positive. It says we have to make sure people aren't using their voice to hurt people or spread misinformation. We have a responsibility not just to build tools, to make sure those tools are used for good. Mr. Zuckerberg, do you feel it's your responsibility to assess users whether they are good and positive connections or ones that those 15 to 20,000 people deem unacceptable or deplorable?
Senator, you're asking about me personally?
Facebook.
Senator, I think that there are a number of things that we would all agree are clearly bad. Foreign interference in our elections, terrorism, self-harm. Those are things.
Censorship.
Well, I think that you would probably agree that we should remove terrorist propaganda from the service. So that I agree, I think is clearly bad activity that we want to get down, and we're generally proud of how well we do at that. Now, what I can say, and I do want to get this in before the end here, is that I'm very committed to making sure that Facebook is a platform for all ideas. That is a very important founding principle of what we do. We're proud of the discourse and the different ideas that people can share on the service. And that is something that, as long as I'm running the company, I'm going to be committed to making sure is the case.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Cruz. You want a break now?
That was sarcastic.
Sure.
That was sarcastic. You want to take a break now after that last round of questioning?
We have Senator White House is up next, but if you want to take a 5-minute break right now.
He want to take that break now, guys. Before he's like, I'll take 15 more minutes. He's like, no, it's time to take a break. Damage control, take a break.
Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg appearing on Capitol Hill. Day 1 of 2. Tomorrow he will go before Congress. Impressed by many senators there. While he was speaking, Facebook shares actually rallied into the close. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kelly Evans here on Closing Bell. Facebook closing higher about 4.5% today. That helped the broader markets, too. We had quite a rebound with the Dow up 428 points there. The S&P adding about 43 points. The Russell 2000 up 28 or so, and the NASDAQ was the best performer in percentage terms with a better than 1 or 2% gain here today. There you can see some of the action on your screen. Facebook, as I said, helping the NASDAQ. Twitter was
definitely pulling back a little bit here after. I would just suspect it.
Some of the social names lifting.
Those who took their profit going into the bill used that kind of spike of that rally, as a way to kind of, get a little bit of that.
Interesting, Kelly, to watch Zuckerberg. He kept his cool. He didn't seem to break into a sweat, and there were some interesting exchanges with the senators. He was very respectful. He referred to everyone by senator repeatedly. There were a couple of times, Kelly, when he said,
"Man, got a good PR team, man. You're a billionaire. He's not coming up with some sloppy, makeshift group of people that he has picked up from a 1-800 call up, speech therapist, whatever, a coaching team up. He's well rehearsed.
He's very much open to regulation.
Again, he's speaking from also a place of, like he's at a board meeting somewhere. I mean, you can clearly hear it in his tone. So he's using that, as a way to kind of keep his confidence in place, so he can speak to the dynamic question that's coming at him, because obviously he gets some very, high-powered questioning, which is very warranted by all intents and purposes. But the meat of the matter is, again, they allow us, me or you, to get on there to ask them or press them on certain questions as users, as users. For some of you guys, it's on there a lot, and others, whatever, daily users, it'll be a whole new different ballgame, so to speak. Us being given the badge where, we hold a level of prestigious, mystique value, right? So he can't just overlook our value. I mean, it'll be on. Yeah. So he's sitting there like, hey, I'm a billionaire. At the end of the day, I'm still a billionaire. I mean, even if y'all did regulate my platform, I'm still a billionaire. I made it.
We have senators saying, "Are you really protecting my data? Is it true that you're really deleting data when you say you are?" And Zuckerberg repeatedly saying, "Yes, yes, we are really, trying to uphold our terms of service and do the right thing."
But it's going to drift a little bit after hours. I mean, I have no doubt this thing is going to drip down a little bit here after hours. I don't see it, just my opinion, sustain it up there around that 165 level. And I'm still short. I didn't even cover my short position, guys. I took it short at 165.86, 170 shares. And, I really like the idea also with the news that came out from a lot of these, investment firms like JP, I think it was like Stifel, it was Stifel, somebody else, Goldman Sachs, a few others that, they giving it a downgrade right now. They gave Facebook a downgrade early this morning. A lot of downgrades came out against Facebook. Whatever the case, and that a lot of that has to do with earnings too, right? Because they got earnings coming up, and they know, since Q3 to Q4, you had a lot of crazy stuff happening during that time frame. Obviously, in terms of Facebook, right? And you think about where it's at now in terms of it's being able to kind of monetize those same third-party, companies now that they've been having to recently, get rid of a lot of them now. Obviously, that hurts the advertisement dollars. Obviously, it still won't really reflect a lot of it until this, the following earnings, right? We're talking about maybe Q2. We'll really see what's going on with those earnings, right? But again, this is a scenario where earnings may be at jeopardy. Their earnings may be in jeopardy here. This report here definitely. And then okay, we'll give it another quarter, and see how it responds from there. If they can kind of show that they're able to monetize them, because again, it just shows you guys outright the majority of the money that they're pulling in is coming strictly to advertisement, the monetization of your content. No matter how you try to, dumb it down and say, well, but it's this way. You can't overlook the validity of the nature of the business here. It's a platform that makes money off, user data. Geotagging. The SQ, what is the SQL? I forgot the little thing called. Well, how they, again, it's caching your data and kind of having it, set up an API value where, these other third-party companies can come on and just siphon off what they need from it. To what extent of the nature of the information we're talking about, be it addresses, phone numbers. Again, y'all know, like I know, y'all been getting a lot of weird phone calls and emails from people out the blue. Sometimes you're like, well, I know I didn't even go nowhere near coming like this. I didn't put in my email address, no nothing. Now, all of a sudden, why am I receiving emails from this company? Or why I'm receiving a phone call from this company? Out the blue. But again, you start saying, okay, well, at some point I gave Facebook my phone number, right? Facebook doesn't have my phone number. Right? I was speaking for me, obviously, it's just me. Right? Addresses, all this stuff like that, being email, even home addresses. Even home addresses. Right? You got people mailing you stuff out the blue. Right? Again, this is all in reference to how, this whole geotagging value where people just trying to make sure they provide you with a steady stream of advertisement of the things that you naturally peruse on your own, that you're searching through, that is readily populated in front of you when you go to a certain website, one or the other. And it's all been coalesced again through using Facebook. Right? Them being the poster child for it. We know the scenario with Google. Yeah, Google does it too in some ways. Facebook is a little bit more malicious with it because obviously this is a platform site where everybody comes to. You just surf through Google. Not that many people really sit around on Google, Google Plus, exchange information the same way they get on Facebook and just go, ballistic. So again, this is the whole reality where, where they're just taking your data and do what they want. And here's what's also interesting again. And I'll go there until I see over John. You say you spoke about Trump lifted the robocall and information executive order Obama signed. I'm gonna even go a little further here and throw Obama under the bus too. He's gonna get it too. The whole Patriot Act, guys. I'm pretty sure you guys know about the Patriot Act. And if you don't, go read up on it. Please go read up on the Patriot Act. And what that also did in allowing the government in itself to be able to do the same thing that they're now criticizing Mark Zuckerberg for doing, so to speak. Spying and prying, pulling your data, accessing your webcams, accessing your phone calls, accessing your text messages, using Facebook as a tool, as a medium to extract, again, use the data to spy on people. You know, obviously it has some purposes here. And again, we're not sitting there going to, you know, Harbinger, you know, again, I don't speak for Facebook. I can care less about Facebook if it crashes and burns tomorrow, the company and the website, whatever. But, you know, they're taking data, you know, obviously got child pornography. You got all these sick people like that on there. There's tons of that foolishness, you know, the whole scenario with the Russian spy scenario, et cetera, et cetera. You know, it's just adamant understanding that, you know, this is what you have to pay attention for, you know, look for. Right? This is still a government used entity they're using by way of his opportunity to kind of house all these 2 billion plus people and still say, well, you know what, we're going to also use this as a way to, you know, keep an eye on people, keep an eye, you know, one eye on the people, so to speak, since she was able to kind of, you know, bring all these people together in this one location. We can just like picking crap, you know, apples and crabs out of a barrel easily. With all the bioretina scan, all this stuff like that we've been reading about for years. Obviously, some of these people that have, you know, computer, you know, they have a computer savvy to understand how this stuff was coming into play. But again, they're using so many of these different things to, you know, to again, you know, harvest your information, your data. You know, so I say kudos to the people that stay off grid, meaning, you know, off the matrix grid, so to speak, in terms of these social media and stuff like that, and or that are people that use it from a very minimalistic perspective. Right? From a very minimalistic perspective. Obviously, you know, I have my moments for using it for just that, minimalistic value, upliftment, stuff like that, you know, investment, stuff like that, you know, but I don't be on there just, you know, this is my family, this is where we was and all this, you know, but that's just me. That's just me. I matured through my little value use of Facebook. I can care less about it now at this point. I can care less about it. You know, I never have my location thing on. Even though I know they can still check, you know, track your IP, all that stuff when you kind of go into their site. It's all the stuff that they tell you that you do have control of that you really don't have control of. I mean, let's keep it 100. Right? You know, so again, there's a lot of stuff, man. It's a lot of stuff. So I always say, man, to protect your data, man. Protect your right, protect your privacy. Don't be so liberal with this stuff just because it seems to be kind of, you know, whatever. I mean, here I always say, if you're not using Facebook to monetize itself to attract people in some kind of way, or just really use to kind of really, you know, be in connection with people that you probably never had a chance to, and you keep a minimum from there, then, you know, yeah, be very cautious. You know, be very cautious.
I think you made a good point that we're different, but I don't think we're so different that Europe has regulations and we have none.
Yeah, that's in the ground about the whole Europe thing.
It'd be really hard to leave this space without some government oversight to make sure this doesn't happen again.
So clearly some harsh commentary from a Republican senator who wants to see regulation of Facebook. So we will see what happens when this hearing continues and who else we hear from in the next moment or so. Kelly, back to you.
Kayla, thank you. Mark Zuckerberg has re-entered the chamber where he'll resume that testimony in just a few minutes.
The guy has like 1 million cameras in his face right now. They huddled around his little table just taking a gazillion pictures of this guy.
Would you tell us what hotel you stayed at last night, sir? And Mark seemed to pause for a minute and then say, no, I wouldn't. And Durbin pursued that line of questioning to indicate yes.
Yeah, that was a dagger question. That was a dagger question when he asked, you know, would you tell us what motel you stayed at last night?
Senators will continue to question him in just a moment. They've already been going for about 2 hours time. And we'll listen in.
Computing Machinery Public Policy Council and Public Knowledge.
Again, the stock is pulling back, like I said.
Thank you, Chairman.
You know, ever so slightly, but it's pulling back.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I want to correct one thing that I said earlier in response to a question from Senator Leahy. He had asked if why we didn't ban Cambridge Analytica at the time when we learned about them in 2015, and I answered that what my understanding was that they were not on the platform, were not a app developer or advertiser. When I went back and met with my team afterwards, they let me know that Cambridge Analytica actually did start as an advertiser later in 2015.
See, there it go. There it go. Got him. He daggered his own self. He boomerang daggered his own self. So now you want to be transparent after the fact. Boomerang daggered himself.
White House. Thank you, Chairman.
He boomerang daggered himself. But hey.
Headquarters with those details for us quickly, Sue.
The Telegraph is reporting that the British headquarters of Murdoch Entertainment has basically been raided by members from the European Commission. It's understood that the watchdog, which has the authority to do that, took various records from the headquarters.
There you go. Everybody getting raided.
They did that, but the stock did respond by moving to an intraday low. Keep in mind that the Murdoch.
So Rupert Murdoch, obviously, him being obviously the owner of Fox News and Fox, the whole Fox empire. His headquarters just been raided in London by the European Commission, the UC basically.
We'll keep everybody posted as we get more
EC, excuse me, the EC.
Thank you, and we'll listen back in to Mark Zuckerberg.
Does he have a Facebook account still?
Senator, I believe the answer to that is no, but I can follow up with you afterwards.
Okay. And with respect to Cambridge Analytica, your testimony is that first you required them to formally certify that they had deleted all improperly acquired data. Where did that formal certification take place? That sounds kind of like a quasi-official thing to formally certify. What did that entail?
Senator, first, they sent us an email notice from their chief data officer telling us that they didn't have any of the data anymore, that they deleted it and weren't using it. And then later we followed up with, I believe, a full legal contract where they certified that they had deleted the data.
In a legal contract?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. And then you ultimately said that you have banned Cambridge Analytica. Who exactly is banned? What if they opened up Cranston, Rhode Island Analytica? Different corporate form, same
DBA, right? You can easily DBA your business, go on a different name.
Senator, that is certainly the intent. Cambridge Analytica actually has a parent company, and we banned the parent company. And recently, we also banned a firm called AIQ, which I think is also associated with them. And if we find other firms that are associated with them, we will block them from the platform as well.
Are individual principals, PALS principals of the firm also banned?
Senator, my understanding is we're blocking them from doing business on the platform, but I do not believe that we're blocking people's personal accounts.
Okay.
Drink a glass of water.
Amend your terms of service, or is the terms of service a take it or leave it proposition for the average customer?
Senator, I think the terms of service are what they are, but the service is really defined by people because you get to choose what information you share, and the whole service is about which friends you connect to, which people you choose to connect to.
My question would relate to Senator Graham held up that big fat document. It's easy to put a lot of things buried in a document that then later turn out to be of consequence. And all I wanted to establish with you is that that document that Senator Graham held up, that is not a negotiable thing with individual customers.
Users.
That is a take it or leave it proposition for your customers to sign up to or not use the service.
Senator, that's right on the terms of service, although we offer a lot of controls so people can configure the experience how they want.
So last question on a different subject having to do with the authorization process that you are undertaking for entities that are putting up political content or so-called issue ad content. You've said that they'll have to go through an authorization process before they do it. You said here, we will be verifying the identity. How do you look behind a shell corporation and find who's really behind it through your authorization process? Well, step back. Do you need to look behind shell corporations in order to find out who is really behind the content that's being posted? And if you may need to look behind a shell corporation, how will you go about doing that? How will you get back to the true, what lawyers would call beneficial owner of the site that is putting out the political material?
Senator, are you referring to the verification of political and issue ads?
Yes. And before that, political ads, yes.
Yes. So what we're going to do is require a valid government identity, and we're going to verify the location. So we're going to do that so that way someone sitting in Russia, for example, couldn't say that they're in America and therefore able to run an election ad.
But if they were running through a corporation domiciled in Delaware, you wouldn't know that they were actually a Russian owner.
Senator, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Got it.
I appreciate that.
Got it.
Share for the extra seconds.
Again, there's a lot of covert realities, the things you can use to kind of access Facebook. You know, same way they came to me, also, you know, what's your ID? Yeah, I just gonna start another page. You know, why would I give you my license, man? Why would I give you my state ID? You know, come on, man. No, I go start another page. I find a way to get, you know, find out my old friends. You know, if it comes to that, but that's just me.
Acts, threats of physical violence, things like that. Beyond that, would you agree that Facebook ought not be putting its thumb on the scale with regard to the content of speech, assuming it fits out of one of those categories that's prohibited?
Senator, yes. There are generally two categories of content that we're very worried about. One are things that could cause real world harm. So terrorism certainly fits into that. Self-harm fits into that. I would consider election interference to fit into that. And those are the types of things that I don't really consider there to be much discussion around whether those are good or bad topics.
Yeah, and I'm not disputing that. What I'm asking is, once you get beyond those categories of things that are prohibited and should be, is it Facebook's position that it should not be putting its thumb on the scale? It should not be favoring or disfavoring speech based on its content, based on the viewpoint of that speech?
Senator, in general, that's our position. One of the things that is really important, though, is that in order to create a service where everyone has a voice, we also need to make sure that people aren't bullied or basically intimidated, or the environment feels unsafe for them.
Okay, so when you say in general, that's the exception that you're referring to. The exception being that if someone feels bullied, even if it's not a terrorist act, nudity, terrorist threats, racist speech, or something like that, you might step in there. Beyond that, would you step in and put your thumb on the scale as far as the viewpoint of the content being posted?
Senator, no. I mean, in general, our goal is to allow people to have as much expression as possible.
Okay, so subject to the exceptions we've discussed, you would stay out of that. Let me ask you this. Isn't there a significant free market incentive that a social media company, including yours, has in order to safeguard the data of your users? Don't you have free market incentives in that respect?
Senator, yes.
Don't your interests align with those of us here who want to see data safeguarded?
Absolutely.
Do you have the technological means available at your disposal to make sure that that doesn't happen, and to protect, say, an app developer from transferring Facebook data to a third party?
Senator, a lot of that we do, and some of that happens outside of our systems and will require new measures. So, for example, what we saw here was people chose to share information with an app developer. That worked according to how the system was designed. That information was then transferred out of our system to servers that this developer, Alexander Cohen, had. And then that person chose to then go sell the data to Cambridge Analytica. That is going to require much more active intervention and auditing from us to prevent going forward, because once it's out of our system, it is a lot harder for us to have a full understanding of what's happening.
From what you've said today and from previous statements made by you and other officials at your company, data is at the center of your business model. It's how you make money. Your ability to run your business effectively, given that you don't charge your users, is based on monetizing data.
Their data, exactly what I said earlier. Here we go. Somebody getting to my questions now.
To what you tell the public, what you tell users of Facebook about what you're going to do with the data,
Right.
How you're
exactly.
going to use it. Can you give me a couple of examples, maybe 2 examples of ways in which data is collected by Facebook in a way that people are not aware of? 2 examples of types of data that Facebook collects that might be surprising to Facebook users.
Well, Senator, I would hope that what we do with data is not surprising to people.
And has it been at times?
Well, Senator, I think in this case, people certainly didn't expect this developer to sell the data to Cambridge Analytica. In general, there are 2 types of data that that Facebook has. The vast majority, in the first category, is content that people chose to share on the service themselves. So that's all the photos that you share, the posts that you make, what you think of as the Facebook service, right? That's everyone has control every single time that they go to share that. They can delete that data anytime they want. Full control, the majority of the data. The second category is around specific data that we collect in order to make the advertising experiences better and more relevant and work for businesses. And those often revolve around measuring, okay, if we showed you an ad, then you click through and you go somewhere else, we can measure that you actually, that the ad worked. That helps make the experience more relevant and better for people who are getting more relevant ads, and better for the businesses because they perform better. You also have control completely of that second type of data. You can turn off the ability for Facebook to collect that. Your ads will get worse, so a lot of people don't want to do that, but you have complete control over what you do there as well.
Senator Schatz. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to follow up on the questions around the terms of service. Your terms of service are about 3,200 words with 30 links. One of the links is to your data policy, which is about 2,700 words with 22 links. And I think the point has been well made that people really have no earthly idea what they're signing up for. And I understand that at the present time that's legally binding, but I'm wondering if you can explain to the billions of users in plain language, what are they signing up for?
Senator, that's a good and important question here. In general, you sign up for the Facebook, you get the ability to share the information that you want with people. That's what the service is, right? Is that you can connect with the people that you want, and you can share whatever content matters to you, whether that's photos or links or posts, and you get control over who you share it with. You can take it down if you want, and you don't need to put anything up in the first place if you don't want.
What about the part that people are worried about, not the fun part?
Well, what's that?
What's that?
The part that people are worried about is that the data is going to be improperly used. So people are trying to figure out, are your DMs informing the ads? Are your browsing habits being collected? Everybody kind of understands that when you click like on something, or if you say you like a certain movie or have a particular political proclivity, that I think that's fair game. Everybody understands that. What we don't understand exactly, because both as a matter of practice and as a matter of not being able to decipher those terms of service and the privacy policy, is what exactly are you doing with the data, and do you draw a distinction between data collected in the process of utilizing a platform and that which we clearly volunteer to the public to present ourselves to other Facebook users?
Senator, I'm not sure I fully understand this. In general, people come to Facebook to share content with other people. We use that in order to also inform how we rank services like newsfeed and ads to provide more relevant experiences.
Let me try a couple of specific examples. If I'm emailing within WhatsApp, does that ever inform your advertisers?
No, we don't see any of the content in WhatsApp. It's fully encrypted.
Right, but is there some algorithm that spits out some information to your ad platform, and then let's say I'm emailing about Black Panther within WhatsApp? Do I get a Black Panther banner ad?
Senator, we don't Facebook systems do not see the content of messages being transferred over WhatsApp.
Yeah, I know, but that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking about whether these systems talk to each other without a human being touching it.
Senator, I think the answer to your specific question is if you message someone about Black Panther on WhatsApp, it would not inform any ads.
Okay. I want to follow up on Senator Nelson's original question.
That one just stumped him a little bit. Yeah, look on his face. He got really flustered off that last line of questioning. He's like, whoa, dang, he went somewhere that who is this senator? What do you know about AI? How does he know about this AI technology that does this? Wow. That was interesting.
Aspirational goal, but it doesn't seem to me that we own our own data. Otherwise, we'd be getting a cut.
Well,
exactly. That's the meat of the question. Why are we not getting paid for people to use our data?
We control the terms under which it's used. When you put it on
Facebook, even Ratchet behind YouTube will give you the ability to monetize, your content, your so-called intellectual property, even though they still harvest it, which by proxy they mean they own it, but they're willing to pay you some little pennies on the dollar for some of your content, intellectual property. But you have to have a certain criteria, right amount of users and all this stuff, whatever. But
Senator, I think that the control is much more granular than that. You can choose each photo that you want to put up or each message, and you can delete those. And you don't need to delete your whole account. You have specific control. You can share different posts with different people.
In the time I have left, I want to propose something to you and take it for the record. I read an interesting article this week by Professor Jack Balkin at Yale that proposes a concept of an information fiduciary. People think of fiduciaries as responsible primarily in the economic sense, but this is really about a trust relationship, like doctors and lawyers. Tech companies should hold in trust our personal data. Are you open to the idea of information fiduciary enshrined in statute?
Senator, I think it's certainly an interesting idea, and Jack is very thoughtful in this space, so I do think it deserves consideration.
Thank you.
Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for being here today. I appreciate your testimony. The full scope of a Facebook user's activity can print a very personal picture, I think. And additionally, you have those 2 billion users that are out there every month. And so we all know that's larger than the population of most countries. So how many data categories do you store? Does Facebook store on the categories that you collect?
Senator, can you clarify what you mean by data categories?
There's some past reports that have been out there that indicate that Facebook collects about 96 data categories for those 2 billion active users. That's 192 billion data points that are being generated, I think, at any time from consumers globally. So how many?
There's a lot of people that filter through Facebook every day too. I mean, just dropping all kind of stuff off.
Senator, I'm not actually sure what that is referring to.
Wow.
On the points
Silence.
Silence. If we call those categories, how many do you store of information that you are collecting?
He's stumped, guys.
The way I think about this is there are 2 broad categories. This probably doesn't line up with whatever the specific report that you were seeing is, and I can make sure that we follow up with you afterwards to get you the information you need on that. The 2 broad categories that I think about are content that a person has chosen to share and that they have complete control over. They get to control when they put it into the service, when they take it down, who sees it. And then the other category are data that are connected to making the ads relevant. You have complete control over both. You can turn off the data related to ads. You can choose not to share any content or control exactly who sees it or take down the content in the former category.
And does Facebook store any of that?
Yes.
How much do you store of that? All of it? All of it? Everything we click on? Is that in storage somewhere?
Senator, we store data about what people share on the service. And information that's required to do ranking better, to show you what you care about a news feed.
Do you,
you
store text history, user content, activity, device location?
Senator, some of that content, with people's permission, we do store.
Do you disclose any of that?
Yes, Senator, in order for people to share that information with Facebook, I believe that almost everything that you just said would be opt-in.
Right. And the privacy settings, it's my understanding that they limit the sharing of that data with other Facebook users. Is that correct?
Senator, yes. Every person gets to control who gets to see their content.
And does that also limit the ability for Facebook to collect and use it?
Senator, yes, there are controls that determine what Facebook can do as well. So, for example, people have a control about face recognition. If people don't want us to be able to help identify when they're in photos that their friends upload, then they can turn that off.
Right.
And then we won't store that kind of template for them.
And there was some action taken by the FTC.
Yeah. But John was just speaking about that facial recognition too. I would never use that anyway, me personally, but he was speaking about that earlier. He wrote that in the back chat about that facial recognition.
It used to seem scary to people, but as long as they could make their page private, they felt safe sharing with their friends online. Control was key. And you just mentioned control. Senator Hatch asked you a question and you responded there about complete control. So you and your company have used that term repeatedly, and I believe you use it to reassure users. Is that correct? That you do have control and complete control over this information?
Well, Senator, this is
good line of questioning.
The core thing that Facebook is.
Good segue.
And all of our services, WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger.
So is this then a question of Facebook is about feeling safe, or are users actually safe? Is Facebook being safe?
Senator, I think Facebook is safe. I use it, and my family use it, and all the people I love and care about use it all the time. These controls are not just to make people
1.87. How many million people were exposed to this?
Think about how you use this yourself. You don't want to share. You take a photo. You're not going to always send that to the same people. Sometimes you're going to want to text it to one person. Sometimes you might send it to a group. I bet you have a page. You'll probably want to put some stuff out there publicly so you can communicate with your constituents. There are all these different groups of people that someone might want to connect with. And those controls are very important in practice for the operation of the service, not just to build trust, although I think that providing people with control also does that, but actually in order to make it so that people can fulfill their goals with the service.
Senator Kudlow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg, for joining us today. I think the whole reason we're having this hearing is because of a tension between two basic principles you've laid out. First, you've said about the data that users post on Facebook, you control and own the data that you put on Facebook. You've said some very positive, optimistic things about privacy and data ownership. But it's also the reality that Facebook is a for-profit entity that generated $40 billion in ad revenue last year by targeting ads. In fact, Facebook claims that advertising makes it easy to find the right people, capture their attention, and get results. And you recognize that an ad-supported service
hidden right in plain sight
today best aligned
in their marketing PR slogan value, and people are like, okay, didn't even know that Cambridge Analytica and those people are saying, yeah, they'll go for this mark. They'll turn that data right over to you, and then we can cipher off that too and feed off them as well, like a leech.
Users, voters, based on racist or anti-Muslim or anti-immigrant views, and that may have played a significant role in an election here in the United States. Just today, Time Magazine posted a story saying that wildlife traffickers are continuing to use Facebook tools to advertise illegal sales of protected animal parts. And I am left questioning whether your ad targeting tools would allow other concerning practices like diet pill manufacturers targeting teenagers who are struggling with their weight, or allowing a liquor distributor to target alcoholics. Or
Overgord, actually still have my share short from 165.86.
I'll give you one concrete
Me personally, I still have mine still open. Again, I had a late day starting in the market anyway in that regard. I was waiting on this news to kind of turn over anyway too.
In real estate advertising,
You know, so I knew the pop was going to happen at some point. Didn't know how far it would pop.
I only want to be seen by white folks, not by people of color, and that clearly violates fair housing laws and our basic sense of fairness in the United States. And you promptly announced that that was a bad idea. You were going to change the tools and that you would build a new system to spot and reject discriminatory ads that violate our commitment to fair housing. And yet a year later, a follow-up story by ProPublica said that those changes hadn't fully been made. And it was still possible to target housing advertisement in a way that was racially discriminatory. And my concern is that this practice of making bold and engaging promises about changes in practices and then the reality of how Facebook has operated in the real world are in persistent tension. Several different senators have asked earlier today about the 2011 FTC consent decree that required Facebook to better protect users' privacy. And there are a whole series of examples where there have been things brought to your attention, where Facebook has apologized and has said, we're going to change our practices and our policies, and yet there doesn't seem to have been as much follow-up as would be called for. At the end of the day, policies aren't worth the paper they're written on if Facebook doesn't enforce them. And I'll close with a question that's really rooted in an experience I had today as an avid Facebook user. I woke up this morning and was notified by a whole group of friends across the country asking if I had a new family or if there was a fake Facebook post of Chris Coons. I went to the one they suggested. It had a different middle initial than mine. And there's my picture with Senator Dan Sullivan's family. Same schools I went to, but a whole lot of Russian friends. Dan Sullivan's got a very attractive family, by the way. And
keep that for the record there, Mr. Chairman.
The friends who brought this to my attention included people I went to law school with in Hawaii and our own Attorney General in the state of Delaware. And fortunately, I've got great folks who work in my office. I brought it to their attention. They pushed Facebook, and it was taken down by midday. But I'm left worried about what happens to Delawareans who don't have these resources. It's still possible to find Russian trolls operating in the platform. Hate groups thrive in some areas of Facebook, even though your policies prohibit hate speech and you've taken strong steps against extremism and terrorists. But is a Delawarean who's not in the Senate going to get the same sort of quick response? I've already gotten input from other friends who say they've had trouble getting a positive response when they've brought to Facebook.
Oh, you already know what it's like. It's like even when they banned you for something very, silly, and you have to go through this whole, appeal process. I mean, which you would never win. Yeah, you really have to. I mean, your chance of winning look like, like two out of 10, maybe 1 out of 10.
There are a number of important points.
Again, it's ran by trolls. It's ran by people that are very biased. It's obvious as moderators that sit on Facebook all day are very biased laden people.
How we got here is we started off.
You're still dealing with human interactions,
and not having the AI technology to be able
human
to
frailties, right? Fragility values, and
so just because
today I'm going to ban you just because, because you're,
the main way that this works today is that people,
and then give you some old lame excuse why they're doing it.
And then we have our team review that. And as I said before, by the end of this year, we're going to have more than 20,000 people at the company working on security and content review because this is important. Over time, we're going to shift increasingly to a method where more of this content is flagged up front by AI tools that we develop. We've prioritized the most important types of content that we can build AI tools for today, like terror-related content, where I mentioned earlier that our systems that we deployed, we are taking down 99% of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda related content that we take down before a person even flags them to us. If we fast forward 5 or 10 years, I think we're going to have more AI technology that can do that in more areas. And I think we need to get there as soon as possible, which is why we're investing.
I couldn't agree more. I just think we can't wait 5 years to get housing discrimination and personally offensive material out of Facebook. Thank you.
I agree.
Senator Sands. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, thanks for being here. At current pace, you're due to be done with first round of questioning by about 1 a.m., so congratulations. I like Chris Coons a lot, with his own family or with Dan Sullivan's family. Both are great photos. But I want to ask a similar set of questions from the other side, maybe. I think the conceptual line between mere tech company, mere tools, and an actual content company, I think it's really hard. I think you guys have a hard challenge. I think regulation over time will have a hard challenge. And you're a private company, so you can make policies that may be less than First Amendment full spirit embracing, in my view. But I worry about that. I worry about a world where when you go from violent groups to hate speech in a hurry, in one of your responses to one of the opening questions, you may decide, or Facebook may decide, it needs to police a whole bunch of speech that I think America might be better off not having policed by one company that has a really big and powerful platform. Can you define hate speech?
Senator, I think that this is a really hard question, and I think it's one of the reasons why we struggle with it. There are certain definitions that we have around, calling for violence or.
Let's just agree on that. If somebody's calling for violence, that shouldn't be there. I'm worried about the psychological categories around speech. You used language of safety and protection earlier. We see this happening on college campuses all across the country. It's dangerous. 40% of Americans under age 35 tell pollsters they think the First Amendment is dangerous because you might use your freedom to say something that hurts somebody else's feelings. Guess what? There are some really passionately held views about the abortion issue on this panel today. Can you imagine a world where you might decide that pro-lifers are prohibited from speaking about their abortion views on your content, on your platform?
I certainly would not want that to be the case.
But it might really be unsettling to people who've had an abortion to have an open debate about that, wouldn't it?
It might be, but I don't think that would fit any of the definitions of what we have. But I do generally agree with the point that you're making, which is as we're able to technologically shift towards, especially having AI proactively look at content, I think that that's going to create massive questions for society about what obligations we want to require companies to fulfill. And I do think that that's a question that we need to struggle with as a country, because I know other countries are, and they're putting laws in place. And I think that America needs to figure out and create the set of principles that we want American companies to operate under.
Thanks. I wouldn't want you to leave here today and think there's sort of a unified view in the Congress that you should be moving toward policing more and more and more speech. I think violence has no place on your platform. Sex traffickers and human traffickers have no place on your platform. But vigorous debates, adults need to engage in vigorous debates. I have only a little less than 2 minutes left, so I want to shift gears a little bit. But that was about adults. You're a dad. I'd like to talk a little bit about social media addiction. You started your comments today by talking about how Facebook is and was founded as an optimistic company. You and I have had conversations separate from here. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think as you've aged, you might be a little bit less idealistic and optimistic than you were when you started Facebook. As a dad, do you worry about social media addiction as a problem for America's teens?
Well, my hope is that we can be idealistic, but have a broad view of our responsibility. To your point about teens, this is certainly something that I think any parent thinks about, is how much do you want your kids using technology? At Facebook specifically, I view our responsibility as not just building services that people like, but building services that are good for people and good for society as well. So we study a lot of effects of well-being of our tools and broader technology. And like any tool, there are good and bad uses of it. What we find in general is that if you're using social media in order to build relationships, right? So you're sharing content with friends, you're interacting, then that is associated with all of the long-term measures of well-being that you would intuitively think of: long-term health, long-term happiness, long-term feeling connected, feeling less lonely. But if you're using the internet and social media primarily to just passively consume content and you're not engaging with other people, then it doesn't have those positive effects, and it could be negative.
We're almost at time, so I want to ask you one more. Do social media companies hire consulting firms to help them figure out how to get more dopamine feedback loops so that people don't want to leave the platform?
No, Senator, that's not how we talk about this or how we set up our product teams. We want our products to be valuable to people, and if they're valuable, then people choose to use them.
Are you aware of other social media companies that do hire such consultants?
Not sitting here today. Thanks.
Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to Senator Blumenthal's pointed questions, you refused to answer whether Facebook should be required by law to obtain clear permission
from users before selling or sharing their personal information. So I'm going to ask it one more time. Yes or no? Should Facebook get clear permission from users before selling or sharing sensitive information about your health, your finances, your relationships? Should you have to get their permission? That's essentially the consent decree with the Federal Trade Commission that you signed in 2011. Should you have to get permission? Should the consumer have to opt in?
Senator, we do require permission to use the system and to put information in there and for all the uses of it. I want to be clear, we don't sell information. So regardless of whether we could get permission to do that, that's just not a thing that we're going to go do.
So would you support legislation? I have a bill.
You don't sell it outright, but you allow other people to
the Consent Act,
filter through your platform to sell information.
and any other company that
Okay.
gathers information about Americans.
Okay, buddy. That's like a Little John moment on Dave Chappelle show. Okay. You don't sell information, but you allow other people to come through, troll through your, user subscribers legally and take their information and go sell it.
That principle is exactly right, and I think we should have
Okay.
how to best
Would you support legislation to back that general principle that opt-in, that getting permission is the standard? Would you support legislation to make that the American standard? Europeans have passed that as a law. Facebook's going to live with that law beginning on May 25th. Would you support that as the law in the United States?
Senator, as a principle, yes, I would. I think the details matter a lot.
Right, but assuming that we work out the details, you do support opt-in as the standard, getting permission affirmatively as the standard for the United States. Is that correct?
Senator, I think that that's the right principle. And 100 billion times a day in our services, when people go to share
I got a secret document in this briefcase I'm sitting on. It says the field he pleaded.
Promise that we make to the American people that permission has to be obtained before their information is used. Is that
Do you
correct?
guys see the picture though? Y'all know he's sitting on a briefcase, right? I don't know if y'all saw the picture. Someone took a picture of him from behind. He's sitting on a briefcase right now. That's why he's sitting up kind of high. That's I forgot what they call this. It's obviously a demonstrative posture, right? To seem, in control, right? Confident, right? So he's sitting on this briefcase to sit up high like this to kind of sit square, so he can kind of proceed to be kind of, in charge and control. I'll post it. Somebody took it. That's in there. Someone took it or wherever they got it from, and they posted it in one of the discords I'm in.
Than a 30-year-old or a 50-year-old. So I have a separate piece of legislation to ensure that kids who are under 16 absolutely have a privacy bill of rights, and that permission has to be received from their parents or their children before any of their information is reused for any other purpose other than that which was originally intended. Would you support a child online privacy bill of rights for kids under 16 to guarantee that that information is not reused for any other purpose without explicit permission from the parents or the kids?
Senator, I think as a general principle, I think protecting minors and protecting their privacy is extremely important. And we do a number of things on Facebook to do that already, which I'm happy to
And I appreciate it. I'm talking about a law. I'm talking about a law. Would you support a law to ensure that kids under 16 have this privacy bill of rights? I had this conversation with you in your office 7 years ago about this specific subject in Palo Alto. And I think that's really what the American people want to know right now. What is the protections of this? What are the protections that are going to be put on the books for their families, but especially for their children? Would you support a privacy bill of rights for kids where opt-in is the standard? Yes or no?
Senator, I think that that's an important principle.
I appreciate that.
And I think we should.
Do we need a law to protect those children? That's my question. Do you believe we need a law to do so? Yes or no?
Senator, I'm not sure if we need a law, but I think that this is certainly a thing that deserves a lot of discussion.
I couldn't disagree with you more. We're leaving these children to the most rapacious commercial predators in the country who will exploit these children unless we absolutely have a law on the books. And I think it is absolutely. Please give a short answer.
Senator, I look forward to having my team follow up to flesh out the details of it.
I don't think Senator Flake to get a correct answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. Thanks for enduring so far.
Got it.
I'm sorry if I plow old ground. I had to be away for a bit. Myself and Senator Cohen, Senator Peters, and a few others were in the country of Zimbabwe just a few days ago. We met with opposition figures who talked about, their goal is to be able to have access to state-run media in many African countries, many countries around the world, third world countries, small countries.
There you go, that third world country. Remember I told you about that, guys? Anytime you hear that third world country stuff, you know what's going on there.
And it's through social media.
Listen up with that.
Provides a very valuable service.
These are the same countries that are going in, exploiting the people, stealing their resources, etc., etc. By branding that, you demand the people, demean the people to make them seem like they're less than. So you have the audacious mentality to go in there, take their resources, then turn around and call them third world. Listen to the commentary, guys. We keep it 100 over here.
With the Rohingya, that example of where the state can use similar data or use this platform to go after people. You talked about what you're doing in that regard, hiring more, traditional or local language speakers. What else are you doing in that regard to ensure that these states don't, or these governments don't go after opposition figures or others?
Senator, there are three main things that we're doing in Myanmar specifically, and that will apply to other situations like that. The first is hiring enough people to do local language support, because the definition of hate speech or things that can be racially coded to incite violence are very language specific, and we can't do that with just English speakers for people around the world, so we need to grow that. The second is, in these countries, there tend to be active civil society who can help us identify the figures who are spreading hate, and we can work with them in order to make sure that those figures don't have a place on our platform. The third is that there are specific product changes that we can make in order to, that might be necessary in some countries, but not others, including things around news literacy, right? And like encouraging people in different countries about ramping up or down things that we might do around fact checking of content, specific product type things that we would want to implement in different places. But I think that that's something that we're going to have to do in a number of countries.
There are obviously limits of native speakers that you can hire, or people that have eyes on the page. Artificial intelligence is going to have to take the bulk of this. How much are you investing and working on that tool to do what really we don't have or can't hire enough people to do?
Senator, I think you're absolutely right that over the long term, building AI tools is going to be the scalable way to identify and root out most of this harmful content. We're investing a lot in doing that, as well as scaling up the number of people who are doing content review. One of the things I've mentioned is in this year, or in the last year, we've basically doubled the number of people doing security and content review. We're going to have more than 20,000 people working on security and content review by the end of this year. So it's going to be continuing to grow the people who are doing review in these places with building AI tools, which is we're working as quickly as we can on that, but some of this stuff is just hard. That I think is going to help us get to a better place on eliminating more of this harmful content.
Thank you. You've talked some about this, I know. Do you believe that Russian or Chinese governments have harvested Facebook data and have detailed data sets on Facebook users? Has your forensic analysis shown you
who else other than Cambridge Analytica downloaded this kind of data?
Senator, we have kicked off an investigation of every app that had access to a large amount of people's data before we locked down the platform in 2014. That's underway. I imagine we'll find some things, and we are committed to telling the people who are affected when we do. I don't think sitting here today that we have specific knowledge of other efforts by those nation states, but in general, we assume that a number of countries are trying to abuse our systems.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Person is Senator Hirano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has proposed a new extreme vetting initiative, which they have renamed Visa Life Cycle Vetting. That sounds less scary. They have already held an industry day that they advertised on the federal contracting website to get input from tech companies on the best way to, among other things, and I'm quoting ICE, exploit publicly available information such as media, blogs, public hearings, conferences, academic websites, social media websites such as Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn to extract pertinent information regarding targets. And basically what they want to do with these targets is to determine, and again, I'm quoting the ICE's own document, they want, ICE has been directed to develop processes that determine and evaluate an applicant's, i.e. target's probability of becoming a positively contributing member of society, as well as their ability to contribute to national interest in order to meet the executive order, that is the president's executive order. And then ICE must also develop a mechanism or methodology that allows them to assess whether an applicant intends to commit criminal or terrorist acts after entering the United States. The question to you is, does Facebook plan to cooperate with this extreme vetting initiative and help the Trump administration target people for deportation or other ICE enforcement?
Senator, I don't know that we've had specific conversations around that. In general,
well, if you were asked to provide or cooperate with ICE so that they could determine whether somebody's going to commit a crime, for example, or become fruitful members of our society, would you cooperate?
We would not proactively do that. We cooperate with law enforcement in two cases. One is if we become aware of an imminent threat of harm, then we will proactively reach out to law enforcement, as we believe is our responsibility to do. The other is when law enforcement reaches out to us with a valid legal subpoena or request for data. In those cases, if their request is overly broad or we believe it's not a legal request, then we're going to push back aggressively.
Well, let's assume that ICE doesn't have a law, there's no law or rule that requires that Facebook cooperate to allow them to get this kind of information so that they can make those kinds of assessments. It sounds to me as though you would decline.
Senator, that is correct.
Is there some way that, well, I know that you determine what kind of content would be deemed harmful. So do you believe that ICE can even do what they are talking about, namely through a combination of various kinds of information, including information that they would hope to obtain from entities such as yours, predict who will commit crimes or present a national security problem? Do you think that that's even doable?
Senator, I'm not familiar enough with what they're doing to offer an informed opinion on that.
Well, you have to make assessments as to what constitutes hate speech. That's pretty hard to do. You have to assess what election interference is. So these are rather difficult to identify, but wouldn't trying to predict whether somebody's going to commit a crime fit into the category of a pretty difficult to assess?
Senator, it sounds difficult to me. All of these things, like you're saying, are difficult. I don't know without having worked on it or thinking about it.
I think confidence would tell us that that's pretty difficult, and yet that's what ICE is proceeding to do. You were asked about discriminatory advertising, and in February of 2017, Facebook announced that it would no longer allow certain kinds of ads that discriminated on the basis of race, gender, family status, sexual orientation, disability, or veteran status, all categories prohibited by federal law and housing. And yet, after 2017, it was discovered that you could, in fact, place those kinds of ads. So what is the status of whether or not these ads can currently be placed on Facebook? And have you followed through on your February 2017 promise to address this problem? And is there a way for the public to verify that you have, or are we just expected to trust that you've done this?
Senator, those are all important questions. And in general, it is against our policies to have any ads that are discriminatory.
Well, you said that you wouldn't allow it, but then, what is it, ProPublica could place these ads even after you said you would no longer allow these kinds of ads. So what assurance do we have from you that this is going to stop?
Well, two things. One is that we've removed the ability to exclude ethnic groups and other sensitive categories from ad targeting. So that just isn't a feature that's even available anymore. For some of these cases where it may make sense to target proactively a group, the enforcement today is still, we review ads, we screen them up front, but most of the enforcement today is still that our community flags issues for us when they come up. So if the community flags that issue for us, then our team, which has thousands of people working on it, should take it down. We'll make some mistakes, but we try to make as few as possible. Over time, I think the strategy would be to develop more AI tools that can more proactively identify those types of content and do that filtering up front.
So it's a work in progress.
Thank you, Senator Bruno. Senator Sullivan's up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Zuckerberg. Quite a story, right? Dorm room to the global behemoth that you guys are, only in America. Would you agree with that?
Senator, mostly in America.
You couldn't do this in China, right? Or what you did in 10 years.
Well, Senator, there are some very strong Chinese internet companies.
Right, but you're supposed to answer yes to this question. Okay, come on, I'm trying to help you, right? I mean, give me a break. You're in front of a bunch of, the answer is yes, okay? So thank you. Now, your testimony, you have talked about a lot of power. You've been involved in elections. I thought your testimony was very interesting, really all over the world. The Facebook, 2 billion users, over 200 million Americans, 40 billion in revenue. I believe you and Google have almost 75% of the digital advertising in the U.S. One of the key issues here is Facebook too powerful? Are you too powerful? And do you think you're too powerful?
Well, Senator, I think most of the time when people talk about our scale, they're referencing that we have 2 billion people in our community. And I think one of the big questions that we need to think through here is the vast majority of those 2 billion people are outside of the US. And I think that that's something that, to your point, that Americans should be proud of. And when I brought up the Chinese internet companies, I think that that's a real strategic and competitive threat that in American technology policy we should be thinking about.
Real quick. I don't want to interrupt, but you know, when you look at kind of the history of this country and you look at the history of these kind of hearings, right? You're a smart guy, you read a lot of history. When companies become big and powerful and accumulate a lot of wealth and power, what typically happens from this body is there's a instinct to either regulate or break up, right? Look at the history of this nation. Do you have any thoughts on those two policy approaches?
Well, Senator, I'm not the type of person who thinks that all regulation is bad. So I think the internet is becoming increasingly important in people's lives. And I think we need to have a full conversation about what is the right regulation, not whether it should be or shouldn't be.
Let me talk about the tension there, because I think it's a good point, and I appreciate you mentioning that. You know, one of my worries on regulation, again, with a company of your size, you're saying, hey, we might be interested in being regulated, but as you know, regulations can also cement the dominant power. What do I mean by that? You know, you have a lot of lobbyists. I think every lobbyist in town is involved in this hearing in some way or another, a lot of powerful interests. You look at what happened with Dodd-Frank. That was supposed to be aimed at the big banks. The regulations ended up empowering the big banks and keeping the small banks down. Do you think that that's a risk, given your influence, that if we regulate, we're actually going to regulate into you into a position of cemented authority, when one of my biggest concerns about what you guys are doing is that the next Facebook, which we all want, the guy in the dorm room, we all want that to start it, that you are becoming so dominant that we're not able to have that next Facebook. What are your views on that?
Well, Senator, I agree with the point that when you're thinking through regulation across all industries, you need to be careful that it doesn't cement in the current companies that are winning.
But would you try to do that? Isn't that the normal inclination of a company to say, hey, I'm going to hire the best guys in town and I'm going to cement in an advantage? You wouldn't do that if we were regulating you?
Senator, that certainly wouldn't be our approach. But I think part of the challenge with regulation in general is that when you add more rules that companies need to follow, that's something that a larger company like ours inherently just has the resources to go do, and that might just be harder for a smaller company getting started to be able to comply with.
Right.
So it's not something that, like, going into this, I would look at the conversation as what is the right outcome. I think there are real challenges that we face around content and privacy and in a number of other areas, ads transparency, elections.
Let me get, I'm sorry to interrupt, but let me get to one final question that kind of relates to what you're talking about in terms of content, regulation, and what exactly Facebook is. You know, you mentioned you're a tech company, a platform, but there's some who are saying that you're the world's biggest publisher. Think about 140 million Americans get their news from Facebook, and when you mentioned to Senator Cornyn, you said you are responsible for your content. So which are you? Are you a tech company? Or are you the world's largest publisher? Because I think that goes to a really important question on what form of regulation or government action, if any, we would take.
Senator, this is a really big question. I view us as a tech company because the primary thing that we do is build technology and products.
You said you're responsible for your content, which makes kind of a publisher, right?
Well, I agree that we're responsible for the content, but we don't produce the content. I think that when people ask us if we're a media company or a publisher, my understanding of what the heart of what they're really getting at is, do we feel responsibility for the content on our platform? The answer to that, I think, is clearly yes. But I don't think that that's incompatible with fundamentally at our core being a technology company where the main thing that we do is have engineers and build products.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan. Senator Udall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, Mr. Zuckerberg, for being here today. You spoke very idealistically about your company, and you talked about the strong values, and you said you wanted to be a positive force in the community and the world. And you were hijacked by Cambridge Analytica for political purposes. Are you angry about that?
Absolutely.
And you're determined, and I assume you want changes made in the law. That's what you've talked about today.
Senator, the most important thing that I care about right now is making sure that no one interferes in the various 2018 elections around the world. We have an extremely important U.S. midterm. We have major elections in India, Brazil, Mexico, Pakistan, Hungary coming up. And we're going to take a number of measures, from building and deploying new AI tools that take down fake news, to growing our security team to more than 20,000 people, to making it so we verify every advertiser who's doing political and issue ads, to make sure that that kind of interference that the Russians were able to do in 2016 is going to be much harder for anyone to pull off in the future.
And I think you've said earlier that you support the Honest Ads Act, and so I assume that means you want changes in the law in order to effectuate exactly what you talked about.
Senator, yes, we support the Honest Ads Act.
So are you going to come back up here and be a strong advocate to see that that law is passed?
Senator, the biggest thing that I think we can do is implement it.
That's a kind of a yes or no question there. I hate to interrupt you, but are you going to come back and be a strong advocate? You're angry about this? You think there ought to be change. There ought to be a law put in place. Are you going to come back and be an advocate to get a law in place like that?
Senator, our team is certainly going to work on this. What I can say is the biggest
I'm talking
thing
about you, not your team.
Well, Senator, I try not to come
here and be an advocate for that law. That's what I want to see. I mean, you're upset about this. We're upset about this. I'd like a yes or no answer on that one.
Senator, I'm posting and speaking out publicly about how important this is. I don't come to Washington, D.C. too often. I'm going to direct my team to focus on this. And the biggest thing that I feel like we can do is implement it, which we're doing.
Well, the biggest thing you can do is to be a strong advocate yourself, personally, here in Washington. Just let me make that clear. But many of us have seen the kinds of images shown earlier by Senator Leahy. You saw those images that he held up. Can you guarantee that any of those images that can be attributed or associated with the Russian company Internet Research Agency have been purged from your platform?
Senator, no, I can't guarantee that because this is an ongoing arms race. As long as there are people sitting in Russia whose job it is to try to interfere with elections around the world, this is going to be an ongoing conflict. What I can commit is that we're going to invest significantly because this is a top priority to make sure that people aren't spreading misinformation or trying to interfere in elections on Facebook. But I don't think it would be a realistic expectation to assume that as long as there are people who are employed in Russia for whom this is their job, that we're going to have zero amount of that or that we're going to be 100% successful at preventing that.
Now, beyond disclosure of online ads, what specific steps are you taking to ensure that foreign money is not financing political or issue ads on Facebook in violation of U.S. law? Just because someone submits a disclosure that says paid for by some 501c3 or PAC, if that group has no real person in the U.S., how can we ensure it is not foreign interference?
Senator, our verification program involves two pieces. One is verifying the identity of the person who's buying the ads, that they have a valid government identity. The second is verifying their location. So if you're sitting in Russia, for example, and you say that you're in the U.S., then we'll be able to make it a lot harder to do that because what we're actually going to do is mail a code to the address that you say you're at. And if you can't get access to that code, then you're not going to be able to run ads.
Yeah. Now, Facebook is creating an independent group to study the abuse of social media in elections. You've talked about that. Will you commit that all findings of this group are made public no matter what they say about Facebook or its business model? Yes or no answer?
Senator, that's the purpose of this group, is that Facebook does not get to control what these folks publish. These are going to be independent academics, and Facebook has no prior publishing control. They'll be able to do the studies that they're doing and publish the results.
And you're fine with them being public. And what's the timing on getting those out?
Senator, we're kicking off the research now. Our goal is to focus on both providing ideas for preventing interference in 2018 and beyond, and also for holding us accountable to making sure that the measures that we put in place are successful in doing that. So I would hope that we will start to see the first results later this year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Udall. Senator Moran is up next, and I would just say again, for the benefit of those who are here, that after a couple of more questions, we'll probably give the witness another short break.
Thank you.
We're getting about almost 2/3 through the list of members who are here to ask questions. Senator Moran.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Zuckerberg, thank you for your, I'm over here. Thank you for your testimony and thank you for your presence here today. On March the 26th of this year, the FTC confirmed that it was investigating Facebook to determine whether its privacy practices violated the FTC Act or the consent order that Facebook entered into with the agency in 2011. I chair the Commerce Committee subcommittee that has jurisdiction over the Federal Trade Commission. I remain interested in Facebook's assertion that it rejects any suggestion of violating that consent order. Part 2 of that consent order requires that Facebook, quote, clearly and prominently display notice and obtain users' affirmative consent before sharing their information with, quote, any third party. My question is, how does the case of approximately 87 million Facebook friends having their data shared with a third party due to the consent of only 300,000 consenting users not violate that agreement?
Well, Senator, like I said earlier, I mean, our view is that we believe that we are in compliance with the consent order, but I think that we have a broader responsibility to protect people's privacy even beyond that. And in this specific case, the way that the platform worked, or that you could sign into an app and bring some of your information and some of your friends' information, is how we explained it would work. People had settings to that effect. We explained and they consented to it working that way. And the system basically worked as it was designed. The issue is that we designed the system in a way that wasn't good. And now we, starting in 2014, have changed the design of the system so that way it just massively restricts the amount of data access that a developer can get. Going forward,
I'm sorry, the 300,000 people, they were treated in a way that was appropriate. They consented, but you're not suggesting that the friends consented.
Senator, I believe that we rolled out this developer platform and that we explained to people how it worked and that they did consent to it. It makes sense, I think, to go through the way the platform works. I mean, it's in 2007, we announced the Facebook developer platform. And the idea was that you wanted to make more experiences social, right? So, for example, if you might want to have a calendar that can have your friends' birthdays on it, or you might want your address book to have your friends' pictures in it, or you might want a map that can show your friends' addresses on it. In order to do that, we needed to build a tool that allowed people to sign into an app and bring some of their information and some of their friends' information to those apps. We made it very clear that this is how it worked. And when people signed up for Facebook, they signed up for that as well. Now, a lot of good use cases came from that. I mean, there were games that were built. There were integrations with companies that I think we're familiar with, like Netflix and Spotify. But over time, what became clear was that that also enabled some abuse. And that's why in 2014, we took the step of changing the platform. So now when people sign into an app, you do not bring some of your friends' information with you. You're only bringing your own information, and you're able to connect with friends who have also authorized that app directly.
Let me turn to your bug bounty program. Our subcommittee has had a hearing in regard to bug bounty. Your press release indicated that was one of the 6 changes that Facebook initially offered to crack down on platform abuses, was to reward outside parties who find vulnerabilities. One concern I have regarding the utility of this approach is that the vulnerability disclosure programs are normally geared toward identifying unauthorized access to data, not pointing out data sharing arrangement that likely could harm someone, but technically abide by complex consent agreements. How do you see the bug bounty program that you've announced addressing the issue of that?
Sorry, could you clarify what specifically?
How do you see that the bug bounty program that you have announced will deal with the sharing of information not permissible as compared to just unauthorized access to data?
Senator, I'm not actually sure I understand this enough to speak to that specific point, and I can have my team follow up with you on the details of that. In general, bounty programs are an important part of the security arsenal for hardening a lot of systems. I think we should expect that we're going to invest a lot in hardening our systems ourselves, and that we're going to audit and investigate a lot of the folks in our ecosystem. But even with that, having the ability to enlist other third parties outside of the company to be able to help us out by giving them an incentive to point out when they see issues, I think is likely going to help us improve the security of the platform overall, which is why we did this.
Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg.
Thank you, Senator Moran. Next up, Senator Booker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Mr. Zuckerberg. As you know, much of my life has been focused on low-income communities, poor communities, working-class communities, and trying to make sure they have a fair shake. This country has a very bad history of discriminatory practices towards low-income Americans and Americans of color, from the redlining, FHA practices, even to more recently, really discriminatory practices in the mortgage business. I've always seen technology as a promise to democratize our nation, expand access, expand opportunities. But unfortunately, we've also seen how platforms, technology platforms like Facebook, can actually be used to double down on discrimination and give people more sophisticated tools with which to discriminate. Now, in 2016, ProPublica revealed that advertisers could use ethnic affinity, a user's race, to market categories to potentially discriminate overall against Facebook users in the areas of housing, employment, and credit, echoing a dark history in this country, and also in violation of federal law. In 2016, Facebook committed to fixing this, that the advertisers who have access to this data to fixing it. But unfortunately, a year later, as ProPublica's article showed, they found that the system Facebook built was still allowing housing ads without applying to go forward without applying these new restrictions that were put on. Facebook then opted in a system that's very similar to what we've been talking about with Cambridge Analytica, that they could self-certify that they were not engaging in these practices and complying with federal law, using this self-certification way to overcome and to comply with, rather, Facebook's anti-discrimination policy. Unfortunately, in a recent lawsuit, as of February 2018, alleges that discriminatory ads were still being created on Facebook, still disproportionately impacting low-income communities and communities of color. Given the fact that you allowed Cambridge Analytica to self-certify in a way that I think you've expressed regret over, is self-certification the best and strongest way to safeguard against the misuse of your platform and protect the data of users and not let it be manipulated in such a discriminatory fashion?
Senator, this is a very important question. And, in general, I think over time, we're going to move towards more proactive review with more AI tools to help flag problematic content. In the near term, we have a lot of content on the platform, and it's hard to review every single thing up front. We do a quick screen. But I agree with you that I think in this specific case, I'm not happy with where we are. And I think it makes sense to really focus on making sure that these areas get more review soon.
And I know you understand that there is a growing distrust. I know a lot of civil rights organizations have met with you about Facebook's sense of urgency to address these issues. There's a distrust that stems from the fact that I know I've had conversations with leaders on Facebook about the lack of diversity in the tech sector as well. People who are writing these algorithms, people who are actually policing for this data, or policing for these problems. Are they going to be a part of a more diverse group that's looking at this? You're looking to hire, as you said, 5,000 new positions for, among other things, reviewing content. But in your industry, the inclusivity, that it's a real serious problem that you are an industry that lacks diversity in a very dramatic fashion. It's not just true with Facebook, it's true with the tech area as well. And so it's very important for me to communicate that larger sense of urgency and what a lot of civil rights organizations are concerned with. And we should be working towards a more collaborative approach. And I'm wondering if you'd be open to opening your platform for civil rights organizations to really audit a lot of these companies dealing in areas of credit and housing, to really audit what is actually happening and better have more transparency in working with your platform.
Senator, I think that's a very good idea, and I think we should follow up on the details of that.
I also want to say that there was an investigation, something very disturbing to me, is the fact that there have been law enforcement organizations that use Facebook's platform to surveil African-American organizations like Black Lives Matter. I know you've expressed support for the group, and Philando Castile's killing was broadcast live on Facebook. But there are a lot of communities of color worried that that data can be used to surveil groups like Black Lives Matter, like folks who are trying to organize against substantive issues of discrimination in this country. Is this something that you're committed to addressing and to ensuring that the freedoms that civil rights activists and others are not targeted or their work not being undermined, or people not using your platform to unfairly surveil and try to undermine the activities that those groups are doing?
Yes, Senator. I think that that's very important. We're committed to that. And in general, unless law enforcement has a very clear subpoena or ability or reason to get access to information, we're going to push back on that across the board.
And then I'd just like, for the record, my time's expired, but there's a lawsuit against Facebook about discrimination, and you moved for the lawsuit to be dismissed because no harm was shown. Could you please submit to the record, do you believe that people of color who are not recruited for various economic opportunities are being harmed? Can you please clarify why you moved for dismiss that lawsuit for the record?
For the record. Senator Heller's up next.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Appreciate the time, and thank you for being here. I'm over here. Thanks. And thank you for taking time. I know it's been a long day, and I think you're at the final stretch here, but I'm glad that you are here. Yesterday, Facebook sent out a notification to 87 million users that information was given to Cambridge Analytica without their consent. My daughter was one of the 87 million, and 6 of my staff, all from Nevada, received this notification. Can you tell me how many Nevadans were among the 87 million that received this notification?
Senator, I don't have this broken out by state right now, but I can have my team follow up with you to get you the information.
Okay. I figured that would be the answer. If after hearing this, going through this hearing, and Nevadans no longer want to have a Facebook account, if that's the case, if a Facebook user deletes their account, do you delete their data?
Yes.
My kids have been on Facebook and Instagram for years. How long do you keep a user's data?
Sorry?
How long do you keep a user's data? Once they, after they've left? If they choose to delete their account, how long do you keep their data?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I know we try to delete it as quickly as is reasonable. We have a lot of complex systems, and it takes a while to work through all that. But I think we try to move as quickly as possible, and I can follow up or have my team follow up to get you the data on that.
Okay. Have you ever said that you won't sell an ad based on personal?
That didn't sound too well.
That you wouldn't sell this data because of the usage of it goes too far?
Senator, could you clarify that?
Have you ever drawn a line on selling data to an advertiser?
Yes, Senator. We don't sell data at all. So the way the ad system works is advertisers can come to us and say, I have a message that I'm trying to reach a certain type of people. They might be interested in something. They might live in a place. And then we help them get that message in front of people. But this is
that's still selling data.
It's widely
by proxy of promotion.
That we sell data. And it's actually one of the most important parts of how Facebook works is we do not sell data. Advertisers do not get access to people's individual data.
Have you ever collected the content of phone calls or messages through any Facebook application or service?
Senator, I don't believe we've ever collected the content of phone calls. We have an app called Messenger that allows people to message mostly their Facebook friends. And we do, on the Android operating system, allow people to use that app as their client for both Facebook messages and texts. So we do
that was one of the biggest issues too when they're talking about how Android was very susceptible to a lot of these data breaches or hacks or accessible VAS where they was collecting people data through these some server value, whatever the case. That's a mess.
And by the way, I agreed with you that because privacy is important to Nevadans. You argued that Facebook users wouldn't trust you if they thought you were giving their private information to the intelligence community. Yet you use and sell the same data to make money. And in the case of Cambridge Analytica, you don't even know how it's used after you sell it. Can you tell us why this isn't hypocritical?
Wow, you that you sell it.
We don't sell any data to anyone. We don't sell it to advertisers. We don't sell it to developers. What we do allow is for people to sign into apps and bring their data. And it used to be the data of some of their friends, but now it isn't. with them. And that, I think, makes sense. I mean, that's basic data portability, the ability that you own the data, you should be able to take it from one app to another if you'd like.
Do you believe you're more responsible with millions of Americans' personal data than the federal government would be?
Good question. Good question.
But Senator,
You literally asked him, do you think you're more safe with America's information than the government itself? I don't trust neither of them. But that was a good question.
People don't have control over that. But on Facebook, everything that you share there, you have control over. You can say, I don't want this information to be there. You have full access to understand every piece of information that Facebook might know about you, and you can get rid of all of it. And I don't know of any other any surveillance organization in the world that operates that way, which is why I think that comparison just isn't really apt here.
With you here today, do you think you're a victim?
No.
Do you think Facebook as a company is a victim?
Senator, no. I think we have a responsibility to protect everyone in our community from anyone in our ecosystem who is going to potentially harm them. And I think that we haven't done enough historically, and we need to step up and do more.
You consider the 87 million users, do you consider them victims?
Yeah, that's what the number was, 87 million. That's it.
Yes, I mean, they did not want their information to be sold to Cambridge Analytica by a developer. And that happened, and it happened on our watch. So even though we didn't do it, I think we have a responsibility to be able to prevent that and be able to take action sooner. And we're committing to make sure that we do that going forward, which is why the steps that I announced before are now, they're the two most important things that we're doing are locking down the platform to make sure that developers can't get access to that much data, so this can't happen again going forward, which I think is largely the case since 2014. And going backwards, we need to investigate every single app that might have had access to a large amount of people's data to make sure that no one else was misusing it. If we find that they are, we're going to get into their systems, do a full audit, make sure they delete it, and we're going to tell everyone who's affected.
Thank you, Senator Heller. We'll go to Senator Peters and then into the break, and then Senator Till is coming out of the break. So, Senator Peters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Zuckerberg, thank you for being here today. You've talked about your very humble beginnings in starting Facebook in your dorm room, which I appreciated that story, but certainly Facebook has changed an awful lot over a relatively short period of time. When Facebook launched its timeline feature, consumers saw their friends' posts chronologically, was the process. But Facebook has since then changed to a timeline driven by some very sophisticated algorithms. And I think it has left many people as a result of that asking, why am I seeing this this feed, and why am I seeing this right now? And now, in light of the Cambridge Analytica issue, Facebook users are asking, I think, some new questions right now. Can I believe what I'm seeing? And who has access to this information about me? So I think it's safe to say, very simply, that Facebook is losing the trust of an awful lot of Americans as a result of this incident. And I think an example of this is something that I've been hearing a lot from folks who have been coming up to me and talking about really kind of an experience they've had where they're having a conversation with friends, not on the phone, just talking, and then they see ads popping up fairly quickly on their Facebook. So I've heard constituents fear that Facebook is mining audio from their mobile devices for the purpose of ad targeting, which I think speaks to this lack of trust that we're seeing here. But and I understand there's some technical issues and logistical issues for that to happen. But for the record, I think it's clear. See, I hear it all the time, including from my own staff. Yes or no, does Facebook use audio obtained from mobile devices to enrich personal information about its users?
No. Well, Senator, let me. So you're talking about this conspiracy theory that gets passed around that we listen to what's going on your microphone and use that for ads. Right. We don't do that. To be clear, we do allow people to take videos on their devices and share those. And of course, videos also have audio. So we do, while you're taking a video, record that and use that to make the service better by making sure that your videos have audio. But I mean, that I think is pretty clear, but I just wanted to make sure I was exhaustive there.
Well, I appreciate that. And hopefully that'll dispel a lot of what I've been hearing. So thank you for saying that. Certainly, today, the era of mega data, we are finding that data drives everything, including
consumer behavior. So consumer information is probably the most valuable information you can get in the data ecosystem. And certainly, folks, as you've mentioned in your testimony here, people like the fact that they can have targeted ads that they're going to be interested in, as opposed to being bombarded by a lot of ads that they don't have any interest in. And that consumer information is important in order for you to tailor that. But also, people are now beginning to wonder, is there an expense to that when it comes to perhaps exposing them to being manipulated or through deception? You've talked about artificial intelligence. You brought that up many times during your testimony. And I know you've employed some new algorithms to target bots, bring down fake accounts, deal with terrorism, things that you've talked about in this hearing. But you also know that artificial intelligence is not without its risk, and that you have to be very transparent about how those algorithms are constructed. How do you see artificial intelligence, more specifically, dealing with the ecosystem by helping to get consumer insights, but also keeping consumer privacy safe?
Senator, I think the core question you're asking about AI transparency is a really important one that people are just starting to very seriously study, and that's ramping up a lot. And I think this is going to be a very central question for how we think about AI systems over the next decade and beyond. Right now, a lot of our AI systems make decisions in ways that people don't really understand.
Right.
And I don't think that in 10 or 20 years in the future that we all want to build, we want to end up with systems that people don't understand how they're making decisions. So doing the research now to make sure that these systems can have those principles as we're developing them, I think is certainly an extremely important thing.
Well, you bring up the principles because, as you're well aware, AI systems, especially in very complex environments when you have machine learning, it's sometimes very difficult to understand, as you mentioned, exactly how those decisions were arrived at. There's examples of how decisions are made on a discriminatory basis, and they can compound if you're not very careful about how that occurs. And so is your company, you mentioned principles, is your company developing a set of principles that are going to guide that development? And would you provide details to us as to what those principles are and how they will help deal with this issue?
Yes, Senator. I can make sure that our team follows up and gets you the information on that. And we have a whole AI ethics team that is working on developing basically the technology. It's not just about philosophical principles. It's also a technological foundation for making sure that this goes in the direction that we want.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Peters. We'll recess for 5 and come back in. So we'll give Mr. Zuckerberg a quick break here. Thanks.
I'm Melissa Lee. You're joining us for a special coverage of Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg's testimony before the Senate Judiciary and Commerce Committees. The testimony began around 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, was relatively cordial, although with some heated moments. Zuckerberg largely calm, composed, prepared through much of the session, and investors appeared to have liked what they saw. Shares jumped by 2.5% from the start of the hearing. In total, Facebook had its best day since April 2016. We've got full team coverage. Julia Borson, Kayla Tausche here on the Hill. The Fast Money team's here. Peter Jerry and Karen Feineman, Dan Nathan, Guy Dami, all here for instant reaction. And by the way, Jim Cramer will be joining us in just a few minutes. But Julia, we want to kick it off with you. What was the most interesting thing you heard today? How would you grade it?
Well, Melissa, I think he's doing really well. You know, he hasn't broken his sweat, and he's been grilled by the 43 senators who are in the room. They're going down there. There's still probably almost an hour left of questions yet to come. And he's fielded questions on a really wide range of topics, everything from election manipulation to data security to cracking down on hate speech, even to social media addiction. So really eclectic assortment of questions. And of course, there were a number of questions about regulation, which he said definitively that he's definitely open to regulation. He was also asked about the sustainability of Facebook's business model, given the changes that they're implementing. He was asked whether a paid option could be in the works.
Offline or online?
Here's what he said.
Is it an alternative to Facebook in the private sector?
Yes, Senator. The average American uses 8 different apps to communicate with their friends and stay in touch with people, ranging from texting apps to email.
The same service you provide.
Well, we provide a number of different
services. Is Twitter the same as what you do?
It overlaps with a portion of what we do.
You don't think you have a monopoly?
It certainly doesn't feel like that to me.
Okay.
So Zuckerberg was asked on a number of occasions to sort of explain how Facebook works. He had to clarify how the timeline works, what Facebook Messenger is, how you can make phone calls through Messenger, what WhatsApp is, questions sort of explaining the basic fundamentals of the Facebook business. And in that situation, he was really quick to dismiss the idea that Facebook had a monopoly. He also said that there will always be a free version of Facebook, but he didn't dismiss the idea of potentially having a paid version. And he had to explain to Senator Hatch that they have a sustainable business right now because they offer ads. So a number of times there where Zuckerberg had to keep his cool and really explain what was going on. And the hearing has been going on for over 3 hours, and it seems like we have quite a bit more to go. Melissa, back over to you.
Yeah, Julia, thank you very much. The Senate, by the way, taking a 5-minute break right now, and as Julia has mentioned, we'll be resuming later on this evening. Zuckerberg, meantime, will be back on the Hill tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. facing House committees. Kayla Tashi standing by with more on what we can expect. And Kayla, there are some pretty interesting moments here. Senator Durbin asked him, for instance, you know, what hotel did you stay at last night? Would you like me to share that with the public? And he said no, to sort of bring home the issue of privacy and why this matters to the American public. You think we're going to see more along those lines tomorrow?
I do, Melissa, and I think what you saw with that line of questioning was Democrats specifically trying to get Zuckerberg boxed in, trying to acknowledge that there's certain information that Facebook may have about a user that he personally wouldn't be willing to disclose about himself. And that just illustrates what this hearing today and these sets of hearings have become on Capitol Hill. They started in response to that specific data breach at Cambridge Analytica, which Mark Zuckerberg continues to say the company was lied to. He said he was very angry when he found out about that. But the line of questioning that we saw broadened out to privacy complaints more generally and to the lack of regulation. We've heard lawmakers on both sides of the aisle bemoaning Facebook's privacy terms, how difficult it is to understand them. And in fact, Senator Joe Kennedy of Louisiana had this to say, his advice to Mark Zuckerberg about those privacy terms when he was talking to reporters just a moment ago. Listen.
And if I were Mr. Zuckerberg, I would go back home and I'd tell my $1,200 an hour lawyers, y'all take a break and let us take a crack at writing this thing in non-Swahili English.
So all joking aside, I think the one thread that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have in common, they are appreciative of Zuckerberg's attendance at these hearings, but very critical about its response to the Cambridge Analytica and other data breaches and of its privacy policies in general. I think you're likely to see that tomorrow again on the House side when 55 members of that committee put Zuckerberg on the hot seat yet again. Melissa?
All right, Kayla, thank you. Kayla Tashi on Capitol Hill. As we had mentioned before, Facebook shares soaring as the testimony kicked off. So how did he do today? And the question here, I think, is, have we seen the low, the Cambridge Analytica low in Facebook shares already?
Well, the low, if you're talking about 149 and change, yeah. I happen to think you probably did see a low. But have you seen, is it going to trend lower from here over the next couple of days? I think it probably will. I think tomorrow's going to be a more difficult day for him than today. You still have earnings in a couple weeks. In my opinion, it would be bad form to report some ridiculously strong quarter after all this happens. Not saying they could sort of mess with the numbers, but I do think there's a chance. 165 here, you see it back down to the high 150s.
So it's not really messing with the numbers. I mean, they've been doing this for the last couple of quarters. They've been saying that spending is going to be higher, that profitability is going to be lower because they're attacking a lot of these issues, on privacy, on data, that sort of thing. So to me, I actually think today was a good old-fashioned short squeeze. As soon as that testimony started, the stock ran up a few bucks, and it stayed up. So that just tells me that people were trapped short. I think there's going to be lower lows. I think there's really one important point that we didn't talk about with those reporters right there. Mark Zuckerberg, probably for the first time in the most public place he's ever been, agreed that for all intents and purposes, they are a media platform, that they are responsible for the content on that platform. And that really changes the dynamic of this thing. They've gone from what our friend Kara Switcher's been saying for years now, that they are a media company and they have to take responsibility, and that leaves a whole other set of regulations.
During the course of the testimony, Mark Zuckerberg actually made reference to the fact that he thinks the company is sort of at an inflection point. They're a different company now. There will be a different company in the future. And for investors who bought into a business model of a year ago, that business model will be different. And how do you value that?
I don't know exactly how to value it. Will be different, but I still think it's a really powerful model.
Sure.
It's not news that they are a media company, right?
The first acknowledgement from this.
They do. I mean, if it, quacks like a duck, it swims like a duck, it's a media company. So I think that for the short term tomorrow, that'll be on the front page of every newspaper, this testimony. I think actually the testimony he does tomorrow will be less important just because so much ground has already been covered. After that, it will recede to the lower part of the paper, then the second page, the third page, until the earnings. And that's what I think is sort of the next important thing. You're right about the numbers. You're both right that it's going to be about the expenses going forward. We don't really know what that's going to be. We talked yesterday about the business model, how powerful this business is. The margins are so huge. They can afford a lot of expenses. I do think that bottom of 148.49 was the low.
The guidance, though, on the expenses will be interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think that they have a good hand? I mean, they said in the testimony in the prepared remarks that they are intending on increasing the number of humans tasked with viewing content for security reasons to 20,000 by the end of this year. I'm not sure if those are baked into the numbers that they've given already, or if that's on in addition to.
I still think, I don't know that we're clear on that.
Yeah.
And I don't know when we'll get that clarity, but I think we're still talking about a powerful, very dominant company that they literally are the Google of what the space that they're in right now. They absolutely dominate. So the idea that I think they're going to crush numbers, by the way, and I think their margins are so incredible and they've been so strong the previous couple quarters that if they can continue that at all, it's going to make up for the money that they're going to probably have to spend. You and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday. I think it's going to be a significant number in terms of the security alone, you know, and everything that goes into what they're going to have to be spending more and more money on. But despite that, these guys are making money, and the ownership of the ad space, it's similar to me to like Google, where they own it.
I think it's a good point that the narrative of higher spending and compressed margins for 2018 has already been in the stock.
Yes.
It's been in the Wall Street community already. But we do want to bring in Mad Money host Jim Cramer for more on Zuckerberg's testimony. How do you do?
Well, look, I thought he was polite. I thought he did not resort to jargon. I think he was, when there was things to explain, he explained them well, tried to do it in English. I know the senator made fun of him, but I thought he was very much a non-tech geek. But you know what I worry about most here? The stock is still telling me that there's something very wrong because the price earnings multiple is too low. And the only thing I can say that would make it so that it's wrong is, geez, they better not have another one of these Cambridge Analytics. I mean, this has got to be the last one. They didn't hire an internal investigator for big time law firm to look at their practices. They just used their own people. He did feel that it was like, I'm sorry, I apologize, but they can't have any more of these, because if they have any more of these, then there's going to be legislation, not just questioning. And I sure hope that he's got that, because the stock's price earnings multiple says that we're not done. It's too low. And when it's this low, it usually means the earnings aren't going to be there.
So, Jim, Pete just said that he thinks they're going to have a great quarter. I don't disagree with what Pete said. My point was, would it be good form for them to have some ridiculously strong quarter after what we've just seen over the last couple of weeks? And is that even an issue? Is there something they can do about that?
Well, I mean, we have to believe that they've spent a fortune, and so therefore the expenses are going to be higher. Look what happened. Morgan Stanley today said that Google, now Alphabet, is going to have higher expenses. Now, the stock got caught up with the rest of the market, but it was down at the beginning. I think people haven't cut numbers yet. And when numbers are cut, stocks go down. Notice there have been people who say, listen, I'm concerned, but numbers have to be cut here. And when numbers are cut, we're going to find out where the stock goes. And they cannot have another Cambridge Analytica. They just can't. Because that's what's going to make the FTC go into agency mode and come up with new rules about opting in, which is going to make it so that you basically are saying, you know what, Facebook, you're going to have to pay me if you want to use my data. That's how bad it'll be if there are more of these breaches. There can be no more breaches.
Jim, it's Karen. Let me just push back on that point a little bit. They've gone to great lengths to say, we don't know what else is out there. We can't tell you for sure that this hasn't happened with other apps. I mean, they've really tried to set the stage for
weird day, right, guys? Late day for me again, but just kind of coming on right before the Mark Zuckerberg, Senate hearing, whatever the case. Obviously, tomorrow's going to be another roasting, so I'll make sure I kind of have that feed up and running for that. Again, interesting day, because again, not just because it's just it's whole Facebook, but these scenarios, the Facebook in itself controls so much of how the market moves as a whole. People don't really understand, especially some of you guys probably new, you probably still kind of figuring this stuff out a lot of ways, but some of these companies are so big to the degree that however their stock moves the market in a lot of ways right along with it. sentiment value, the whole thing. And obviously we saw that with that rally from Facebook when it jumped up and ran, you know, picked up those extra little $4 or $5, you know, $5 or $6 somewhere around there. And the rest of the market was kind of trending on top of that. Hold up.
You'd only invest by options?
Yes.
All right. Jim, I know you got a big show ahead, lots of ground to cover, so why don't you take it away?
All right, thank you so much. So thank you for letting me play for a little bit. You guys all heard. All right, you've heard a little of what I think about Zuckerberg.
So right now, Facebook is pulling back. Now it's pulling back now. Not to say it's gonna last, but it's pulling back now. It went up there and hit that resistance, which I figured that's why I took my short up there at that level of 166. Excuse me, world. I took it at 165.86. But I was trying to get filled at 166, but I couldn't, obviously. But I got in as high as I possibly could. And you know, went up there and hit it twice. It was a double top scenario at 1745, which is 545 to basically roughly around let's say 610, somewhere around there, and it couldn't push through that level of resistance. So again, as of now, my short is safe. It's pulling back now because obviously I see the SPYs trending down a little bit too right now. So again, I don't know if there's any more news that just dropped. Probably Trump tweeted or something. But you know, again, Facebook is it's a very weak company. They're in trouble at this moment. That's why I took it short from that 185 level. I ended up getting filled at 177 that day. Pushed it down, you know, covered, then took it again from 172 and pushed it all the way down to 148, 149. For the same reason, because all the information was just compiling. And today is the day of reckoning. Obviously, him going before, you know, the Senate and whatever the case like that. And you know, tomorrow as well. You know, so and then they got earnings again in a couple of weeks. So, you know, I'm still bearish on the stock. Me personally, I'm still bearish on this stock. You know, until I see something different at this moment in terms of investor sentiment shift, even though I know the options market is kind of buying up a little bit, I'm still bearish on the stock. I know it has bullish spurts. Yeah, I see that too. You know, and those moments present themselves in a way, you know, sometimes I'll take those positions for a scalp, but I wouldn't sit in it from a place like saying, no, I'm just long right now at this point. Now, for those that got in at that 148, 149 bottom, for now they're winning. If they're long, you know, if they dollar cost average in, you know, added more to the shares at that point when they pull back. Same way people do with Bitcoin. You know, it's like, yeah, it's this and this, that. Is it going to ever get back up there? But when it comes back and hit those low levels of support, you know, and bounce within those certain channels, that's just a sign of strength, so to speak, that it hit, you know, a bottom wall at some point, which makes for a good bottom entry price. But you know, depends how you feel about the asset. You know, if you just want to long it for that from that perspective. But for me, again, I just pay attention to the technicals and then, you know, back it up by what little fundamentals I can kind of make sense by. So again, right now my little short's going well. It went up there and tested it twice, you know, my level. And then again, you just saw it down drift. If you guys watching, or you know, you might be peeking in on the stock. It's down drifted almost near, actually over $1 at this point. It actually pulled back over $1 at this point. Now, it will be interesting here going into these last little couple hours of the market here before 8 o'clock to see exactly how it's responding. You know, how much of this is it going to pull back in those gains? Because again, a lot of people saw it adding more to their share short at that same level of resistance that I saw, which is that 166 level, right? So he hit it twice, up there near it twice. Short sellers say they piled on a little bit, and then they're using the SPY, which the SPY started pulling back to kind of validate them why they took that there. So again, I didn't have any masterful day. I didn't have a big, huge day. You know, again, I had an early, you know, couple losses that obviously put me in the red, like bigly, and battled back, you know, a little bit on the back end of the day, because obviously I didn't start trading to really, like, you know, midday reality, so to speak. So I was late to the market, so to speak, and I battled back, and now I'm in the green. You know, definitely could have been a red day. It was still a red day in my mind because I shouldn't have had a loss that I had today, and that magnitude at that. You know, again, but that's the market. So I mean, only up like $195 right now. You know, that can be evaporated definitely in the next couple of hours. You know, depending on the market. But I'm excited for one thing. The SPY broke the VWAP, right? And it's pulling back a little bit here, so it's starting to kind of take a breath. You know, and it's pulling back. you know, in my favor. You know, obviously, I hadn't shared my screen all day, I guess. Let me see, show you guys where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, tough day, man, you know. For me, that is, in terms of just, you know, coming in late and then trying to get out to the market and, you know, being down. Obviously, as you see here, for you guys that's, you know, watching along with your brother, still kind of hanging out with me. You know, obviously, odd day in terms of how I'm kind of breaking down my day and showing it at this time of, you know. But, you know, I just kind of want to kind of show that here in, you know, the Facebook thing. Cause that was, I know that was huge. And I know what it would do in terms of, you know, bringing some clarity, especially to a lot of you guys that are still kind of learning this stuff and figuring it out. And, you know, all this content is you know, it's good data. But again, now you know how to even assess Facebook, even if you're just a user and never understood it from an investor perspective. You heard a lot of interesting stuff to let you know exactly this is the kind of company you're dealing with. You know, and I can guarantee if you ask the average person, you know, how many people you think was watching this Facebook Live hearing today to hear Facebook, you know, Mark Zuckerberg speak, you know, before the Senate. You know, a lot of people probably didn't even care, or they probably didn't even have an idea. They're oblivious to this. And those are the same ones that going around still hitting that, you know, acknowledge this, acknowledge this. Every time Facebook puts up something up there, say, hey, you know, click this and acknowledge this. They're not even reading it. Again, none of that data saying, you know, hey, be careful here. They can care less. Again, I understand, you know, nobody's going to sit there and read through that. You think these people are going to have your best interest in mind. We all live by that rule of thumb, so to speak, and that's the most dangerous thing we can do, especially going forward now. As, you know, smart individual, you know, intellectual people that just trust so much of these people with our lives and our, you know, content, whatever, intellectual property, so to speak. The same way, just because the FDA puts a stamp of approval on something, don't mean it's necessarily good for you. They put FDA stamp of approval on GMO items that's been sprayed with arsenic and lead and mercury, and the list is endless. But yet it's still FDA approval. And I'll be like, hey, you know, I got some, you know, natural herbs, wild crafted, organic, straight from nature, you know, grown wild. And they'll look at me like, man, I got to research that. And they'll leave me and go right over to, you know, Taco Bell or, you know, Walmart and get them little GMO, you know, pain pills and everything else under the sun. Right. And then whatever. You know, and that's, to me, again, that's that's the low of the brainwashing and propaganda people fall for every day in terms of, you know, how they're marketed to and to what they will believe, you know, whatever, just blindly trusting everybody. You know, again, so just touching on that, you know, again, I know it's you know, that was interesting listening to him speak and go through that. You know, we'll fire it up again tomorrow and go through the whole, you know, scenario and see what happens from that. But it was very fun. It was fun nonetheless. And you know, again, we'll get out to the market tomorrow, make it, you know, see if we can get some out of it. But again, today, as you see here, you know, I had a bad day, but I still have some green on the table, as you see. There's $185. All that mean I ain't locked it in. So technically, I'm red on the day, but again, I know I'm up. You know, that 170 some odd bucks if it, obviously, you know, these stocks hold over into tomorrow. You know, being I cover those positions out in the green. But as announced, I'm green on the P&L at this level. Right, you know, don't count till you lock it in. But that's that, you know, that's that, you know, the type of market there. You know, obviously I've been tearing it up over the past 3 weeks or so. You know, today, you know, like I say, if it's $1, $5, you still win. Yeah, it ain't $1,000 and $1,500 like yesterday, and $8,000 a couple of times I hit the following week and all that kind of stuff, and then the $23,000, $30,000, all that stuff. But it's okay. You know, it's okay. You learn it, right? It's just applied value that you can be able to lock in that, you know, as you so choose by making smart decisions. And being that I kind of, you know, took on the market a little later today, as opposed to, you know, a way to kind of really assess it early on. You know, it didn't really help me out either. But again, we still have some green value on the day. All right. So we'll see. We will see. All right. So this Kramer's on now, you know, the usual Kramer being himself. So.
I'm so glad you answered my call because I'm lost and I need your help.
Well, I'm certainly the doctor.
My question was about Apple's announcement in December.
All right, so yeah, he's just talking. So yeah, I'm gonna get ready to shut it down, guys. Like I said, came on late. I appreciate you guys stopping by as always, man. Sharing in the moment. I hope you guys had a great day in the market. You know, I hope you know, obviously, if you wasn't trading, just obviously, just analyzing it, taking notes, journaling what you're seeing. So obviously, when that day comes, you get ready to pull that trigger, you have a little bit more understanding and validity to what you're doing, right? The goal is to make this stuff, make sense per every day we look at it or assess it or trade it. Yeah, so again, I hope you guys are really kind of absorbing a lot of this information, unlike Facebook, right? Absorbing your data, right? Selling it to Tyrone Biggums, right? Tyrone Biggums hitting up Mark Zuckerberg, and he offering Mark Zuckerberg a couple of them rocks, right? For some of your data. You got some rocks. You got some rocks, right? Tyrone Biggums and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg business partners. But y'all get my point. We couldn't have had a little fun, but this is the stuff we talk about. This is why we need to analyze all this stuff, and this is exactly why we need to be discussing this kind of stuff and current events, right? Now, exactly why current events matters. Current events matters, right? And from this, we're seeing this stuff happen, and we see it unfold again, and then we know how to apply it. That's a level of investor sentiment. Just by the level of being able to kind of, observe these different little current events and then see how the investors respond from that. So if you're just watching again from the very beginning, or if you're just listening to it, if you guys are here on the audio side, I should have had a way to I should have set it up and just ran the audio, the visual too. But I don't know how, whatever. I know there's some probably legalities of content to that. So whatever goes. So I just did the audio. I don't know. I'm still learning this stuff too. I was in Facebook, but again, if you would have saw it initially, before he started speaking, the stock was kind of going, weird. And then as soon as he started speaking, whatever, again, this is that kind of euphoria of people that just, irregardless of the fact that they know it's a lot of, this is a serious situation, they just start buying the stock up. Just because they saw Mark Zuckerberg, he started speaking like like that fandemonium, so to speak, right? Like that whole fandemonium mentality. So all these fans and people that are just extra bullets, right? We call them the perma bulls. Right, because they can only invest in one way, obviously, and in the room that we all start somewhere. But again, this was a serious situation, but the stock just skyrocket, right? A good old fashioned short squeeze, like that the guy said on the panel. It was a good old fashioned short squeeze, and it squeezed up from shorts. I got squeezed, right? Because I was in early at 162, right? I thought that was a good little level of resistance, and then he got to speaking. As soon as he got speaking, he started speaking. It started skyrocketing, right? Forced me up out of there around about 162.80 something. And I said, I'm gonna sit back and wait. Let me see if we can hit a top somewhere. Let me see if it's, where it's at. It peaks before I kind of, touch it again. And lo and behold, I saw that level up there around that 165.86, 165.87 level, which I got filled literally. You see right here, I got my cross bar up here. I got filled literally at 165.86. I mean, perfect. The top was around about 165.88. I got filled 165.86 short, 170 shares. Obviously you got this little flashback, pull back, obviously snap back, came right back again, U-shaped a little bit, bounced up here, U-shaped again a little bit, bottomed out, and rolled back up again, touched that level of what? Resistance again. Again, that's why I didn't get nervous. I see that was a point here that it can break through. So that became resistance by natural understanding, which presented on the larger scale here, big, nice double top. Nice big wide double top there. And it broke down. And then the SPY helped too, because look at the SPY, right? The SPY, hit that point of fatigue here at 6 o'clock, right? 1800 here, and again, it broke the V out. Then I was like, okay, yes. All right, for now, my short position sake. So again, nothing major, just up 130 bucks. I had a bad day today, but I'm still green all day. But I got to tighten that up there. All right, I hold myself, to accountability. I want to be that way for a reason. All right, so again, but that's the market, right? We live and we learn and we getting better. And obviously, that case, I came in the market late. Yes, you're 100% right. Thank you, brother Fireboy. Always, family. Always. We just want to bring content, man. Dumb this stuff down, make it make sense, put it in the layman terms for all you guys. That's what we call benefit from it. Same way, brother Emperor Trade. Thank you for stopping by. Over. I see you in the house. My brother Emperor Trade is in the family, in the house. So again, I know you just kind of stopped through. I appreciate that, family. It's good. We're just kind of going over kind of what was what we're assessing from hearing the Facebook, CEO Mark Zuckerberg speak. I mean, it's not like you guys don't know him, acting like we don't know who he is, but yeah, it was very interesting. So again, like I said, I'm just speaking about that stock. I took a short at 165.86 off the top, and we're gonna see if we can get this thing to kind of downtrend a little bit here, move down over the next day, right? Because I still think there's a lot of implied down moving on the way. And that pop was just fugazi, right? Nothing really sustained it to this point. It's just gonna, we'll see. All right. So again, so let me get ready to get out here, guys. So I appreciate you guys stopping by, and we'll do this thing possibly tomorrow. You know, with them doing the hearings or whatever. So put some more content to that, and we'll go from there. All right. So you guys have a great evening, man. Y'all have a great one. Uncle Johnson there, power and profit to the family.